Yeah.
Seat's a little low. Oh, it moved. I got an outlet now. Oh, right. I'm trying to put all my crap on.
Something.
Megan, please. Yeah, Michael's working on those. Can you make me a co-host?
So you just say, okay, we're ready. Sarah's going to like everything. And
Megan would be. I'm gonna rejoin without my audio.
we don't have to worry about it, not really. Right? But no, in the new and this last Paul Johnson. And I didn't check. Okay.
This is the workshop. Oh, are we ready? Workshop and regular meeting for the Fraser Town Board on January 17th, 2024. And Sarah's gonna do the workshop.
Hello, everybody. Give me just a second and I will share my screen here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you everybody for being here. I apologize for the delay. I was having some printer issues, so I'm gonna fly here without my notes for a minute, but we've had a lot of support for this project. So I just want to acknowledge as we're getting started, some of the different organizations that have shown support for the bike park project. The rec district has definitely been a big supporter. They've been looking at the possibility of something like this for a while. Headwaters Trails Alliance, there is a new mountain bike alliance that was recently formed in the Valley that's also been a huge supporter. And just a lot of different kind of individuals that have participated as stakeholders. And I apologize if I am forgetting anybody on that list. But to start off today, we're going to talk about the Fraser River Corridor Master Plan and just kind of revisit that plan to give us some context for the area. And as we jump into the bike park, so that we can kind of keep in the back of our minds as we're discussing what we want to do moving forward, the balance of some of the different priorities and amenities that we are looking to have as part of this overarching master plan for the Fraser River corridor and the Cousins Ranch open space area. So without further ado, the Cousins Ranch open space master planning process started in August 2017. It was completed in April 2018. That was funded through a Great Outdoors Colorado planning grant, and a number of different consultants were brought in on that project. Colorado Parks and Wildlife was also consulted. There was a series of planning workshops that a number of people in the community participated in. They sent out an online survey, and I believe it was about 300 respondents. So there was a good amount of community engagement around that. What came out of that plan was that this is a very special area to a number of Fraser residents. A lot of people did really emphasize the importance of keeping it wild and protecting the river and the natural habitat that's there. A number of the different goals that came out of kind of the vision of that process. It was seen, on the one hand, there was this desire to keep it wild and kind of untouched by some, but also to activate it. And it was seen as kind of an underutilized resource for the community. So really trying to strike that balance between activating the area with recreational opportunities that would bring both residents and tourists into the area, as well as trying to preserve the environmental benefits of the area. So you can see the different goals here that came out of that were behind the master plan, implementing a community-driven vision for the Cousins Ranch open space that identifies open space needs, goals, and strategies to activate this underutilized 120-acre open space asset. And then using this also as a way to acquire additional funding to try to implement some different aspects of the plan. It really sought to build consensus for the planning effort with a desired outcome to, again, balance that protecting the land and wildlife with recreational activities and educational opportunities, protecting, connecting, and inspiring. Goal number 4 here, I think, is important to keep in mind too as we talk about the bike park. Being able to use the Fraser River corridor as a major local and regional asset to expand the existing tourist industry and to build and support economic diversification. And that's something that we've heard from a lot of people as we've looked at this, as mountain biking just continues to grow as an attraction in the area. And this is something that would really nicely complement the great variety of mountain bike trails that we have. Again, a focus on that balance between recreation and preservation, activating the Lions Pond through the creation of a safe, visible riverside park, making sure that we have ADA accessible opportunities that support the inclusion of all user groups, improving parking within and enhancing public transportation, internal pedestrian and bicycle circulation, increasing user safety by minimizing conflicts between user groups. And then lastly, reducing pet waste was said to be a big area of concern. So this is kind of an overview from the master plan of the different, they called them reaches of the Cousins open space. And this reach 6 for the Lions Safeway area is what you'll see at the very top of the map there. And this was the area that was identified to really activate and put in different recreational amenities and try to draw visitation into this area. The rest of this Cousins Ranch open space in green here is really being, for the most part, left alone and preserved and just kept as open space. So this was the executive summary for the plan. Through the public process, it became evident that they really wanted detailed recreational opportunities for the Lions Pond area. A conceptual plan was drawn up. Throughout the process, there were a number of different kind of renderings. And I apologize, I waited too long to print these and there was a bunch of other stuff printing. So you should get copies of these shortly if you're struggling to see. But you can see a number of amenities. Just to talk about some things that we've already done in the plan. There was a call for greater tree canopy, so we have planted a number of trees. Those are still growing, so you don't yet see the full effects of that effort. Increased cross-country ski grooming has taken place, and that was a big item that a lot of people requested in the plan was increased cross-country skiing opportunities through this area. ADA accessibility has been completed around the ponds, making these trails completely ADA accessible. And then we are just about done with the Marianne's Loop Trail, which we'll look at on the next slide here a bit closer. That is also largely ADA compliant, though there are some spots that are too steep to make it fully ADA compliant. And then lastly, the bathrooms, which a few of us attended the ribbon cutting ceremony in the snow just before now. I didn't have time to add a photo, but I'll show you on another slide where the bathrooms is, but it's kind of near this central plaza. So we have made some good strides with the master plan, but there are a number of features that we're still hoping to complete in the years to come. For this section of the plan, we are looking at kind of this area south of the South Lions Pond area for a bike park. And then also down here towards the bottom, you can see where it's identified for constructed wetlands and some kind of exploration trails. And so that's something we'll talk about as well. And please feel free to stop me at any time with questions. Otherwise, when we get to the end, we can dive in as well. Well, we're looking at this bottom area to kind of focus on now. In subsequent phases, we would look at an amphitheater and kind of outdoor event space up here, kind of between the ponds on that northwest side. And then a natural playground areas here. And what we're trying to do as we work through these recreational amenities is also make sure we're addressing some of the environmental concerns that came up in the plan and some of those projects as well. So again, this shows you just kind of the overarching open space. Again, the focus for the recreational amenities is here around the ponds. There's a lot of great willows and wetland habitat, particularly for migratory birds, elk, moose, and other species. So we're looking to keep that largely open space. But the Marianne's Trail loop that was put in does connect this Fraser River Trail. It makes a loop down here at the bottom, down by Rendezvous Road. It goes back behind the fire station, comes up here around these ponds, and then connects back to the fishing ponds. So Skinny Traffic Trails, who's also here with us today, constructed those for us. And the last little section that we have remaining is this section in red up at the top by Safeway that we should be finishing up. If the weather gods permit, hopefully sometime late spring, early summer, once the snow clears. And then we've got some funding left from a state trails grant for that also will go towards additional kiosk and benches, things of that nature. So where we're at now, we're looking at a proposed bike area, just kind of south and adjacent to this South Lions Pond. We have with us on Zoom Megan Bradley from American Ramp Company, who we've been working with to do kind of the community engagement and design around the bike park. We told American Ramp Company when they were tasked with this that this was kind of the main area that we were looking at, that depending on kind of community interest and interest from the board, the direction that we got, that we may be able to use a bit more area. And I'll talk after this about the survey that went out. Originally in the master plan, the focus is kind of on a bicycle playground, something that would be kid and family friendly. I think there's still a lot of interest for that, but we've also received a lot of interest from adult users and just kind of more intermediate advanced users. We're not looking to do something like trestle up the road, but just to kind of have something that would provide a progression of skill levels and that could be utilized by a wider population than just the little kiddos. Some of you know I have a 3- and 6-year-old, so I get very excited about the bicycle playground and a little pump track for the kids. But I think it would be great for this to meet the needs of more users. And so we've kind of told American Ram Company to go ahead and shoot for the moon, and then we'll see where it lands in terms of what we want to do with us, as well as what sort of funding we can bring in. So these are the different bike park areas. A couple of things of note, these blue lines through here is a 1% FEMA annual chance flood hazard zone, also sometimes known as a 100-year flood zone. A lot of people that have looked at this and read topo maps with more skill than I do, seem to think that this area has actually shifted south with topography changes. The FEMA data is pretty old, but with this current FEMA data, it does provide some restrictions on how we build in this area. We have to have zero net kind of earth fill in there. So American Ram Company's been able to work with that with their design, but as we get to the design, we can talk about what that kind of does for that. Another area I'll point out over here, this additional bike park area A, and working with Grand Environmental, our environmental consultant, around a lot of this area is really, are some important willows and wildlife habitat. This area in here, Jeff Elliott was saying, he would expect to see a lot more signs of animal usage, but that it really doesn't seem to be used that much for wildlife apart from some rodents. So there's not too much concern with using this area in regards to wildlife, but there is concern with making sure we're protecting a barrier between this area and the willows, which is important habitat, particularly for those migratory birds. So we have some ideas around that, and we've been consulting with Colorado Parks and Wildlife to get their feedback on those plans. So one of the projects that Jeff and I have been discussing and that we've been looking at, and we spoke this week with Colorado Parks and Wildlife about, was kind of improving some of the drainage through here. There was an emergency drainage ditch, as I understood, that was put in back here a while back. Sorry, that's not it. It's actually right along this line between kind of the yellow and the green, I believe is where it is. But trying to take some of the stormwater drainage, the town is embarking on a kind of a fuller study and master plan for stormwater drainage and making sure that we are filtering out what we need to and only have good water going into the river. But kind of using these wetlands and maybe doing some constructed wetlands per the per the master plan down in this area with some little exploration trails, a wildlife viewing platform, and then building up kind of a natural berm and a 20 to 30-foot buffer, planting some trees that would just kind of separate any bike park activity a little bit better from these willows. And again, just thinking about the wildlife and the birds and trying to make sure we are not having too much negative impact on them. So any questions about anything thus far before we kind of jump into bike park specifics?
Yep. Sarah, hey, Lewis. So what is the acreage of that, the yellow and the additional bike park areas you have laid out? And is that, I'm not that familiar with how much land it takes to build a bike park, but what's kind of normal? Could we expect? And
It
why do
really
you
varies. If you go to like Frisco, like they have a bike park area that's, I would say, significantly larger than this. And a lot of them are kind of going up on hillsides and things like that we would not be doing. I think this would kind of fall in the medium range. And Megan could probably speak better than I could to how this compares to other bike parks they've worked with.
Yeah, so bike parks really can range, and it can be as small as, 20,000 square feet, to, if we go into acres, it could be 6 acres, or if it's more of a trail system, much more than that. So, for bike parks of this type, I'd say on average, this is what in that yellow area is pretty standard. So I can measure it, but it's roughly this size, which is 65,000 square feet. So that's in acres. We usually are working with about 2 to 4 acres. And then either end of that is more extreme end of the spectrum.
Okay, so it's about an acre
Yeah,
of
this one, the yellow area is about
footprint.
1.5 acres, and then then there is an additional space. So I think this is all about a little over 2 acres is what we're looking at.
So it's the whole thing combined, the yellow part and then the other additional areas that you've outlined would be about 2 acres, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And something I forgot to point out, we're also looking at, this would be a parking area down here off the frontage road, which was one of the things that was called out in the master plan, the need for more parking. We are hoping with the bike park that we look at people biking there as well if they are coming locally. And then you can see, just for reference point, our new bathrooms, which are up here. And then it's kind of this area here where the two ponds meet that we would be looking at for kind of amphitheater outdoor event gathering space. And then down the road over here closer to Safeway on the other side of the bathrooms and kind of little plaza area where we have fire and ice would be kind of like a natural playground and some river park features there.
Is that road gonna be two-way at some point, or is it supposed to?
There is discussion of making it two-way as part
Is
of
that what?
this larger plan.
easier?
Yeah, I think there's considerations both ways, but I have heard more pros and yays for making it two ways than keeping it one way.
Yeah, CDOT's plan has it going 2 ways. So whenever CDOT expands Highway 40 to 4 lanes through Fraser, then they'll make that a frontage road basically.
I don't think so. One of the things that we are looking at potentially as part of this kind of drainage going out, I don't have a photo of it handy, but Jeff Elliott with Grind Environmental has kind of been focused on the riverbank here and trying to do some things to stabilize and actually improve fishing access there. So that might be something that we actually look to wrap into this project here. But yeah, it definitely wouldn't affect it around the ponds, and there is a little kind of frontage access road to a well right here that the bike park would stay on this side of, so the fishing should active on the other side. So I'll go ahead and just give you kind of a brief overview of the survey. I didn't think we needed to necessarily dive too far into the details, but just wanted to just kind of show the participation that we did get. We had 277 participants. I know Cole, who led a meeting with some of our stakeholders from different organizations and individuals that have expressed interest, was sharing that that's actually a pretty high participation rate. He typically would expect to see about 150 participants from a town like Fraser. I thought it was really cool to see too that the vast majority of those survey results were coming locally, with the most number coming from Fraser. And then 80478 is Tabernash and 482 would be Winter Park. So a lot of local interest from writers. Definitely had a lot of the adults participating, which I think makes sense based on the way the survey was kind of structured. Under 12, I filled it out for my 2 kiddos, so that might actually be my family's household, but we did send it to the elementary school in hopes of getting some responses. But as you can see, a lot of kind of intermediate and more advanced writers really expressing interest and showing support for the project. Another thing that I thought was cool to see when asked how often they would use it, we've got close to 80% of respondents saying that they would use it on either a weekly or a monthly basis. And again, just in terms of some of the different comments that were there, really thinking that it would be important to have kind of that progression from beginner to more advanced features working through, wanting to make sure that the cross-country ski trails would still be groomed, and that definitely would happen. One of the ideas is trying to see, once we have this bike park design, if we could actually work in maybe a little kiddo loop to go around. And I would like to motivate the children to be more excited to go out and just make it more playful and fun for them to maybe have some features in a little loop. So cross-country ski grooming is still in the plans, whether or not it happens in the bike park. We've also talked about if they would be accessible to fat tire bikes, so that would be another winter option for the area. But yeah, just a lot of great support for it. So with that, this is kind of an overview, showing you what we're looking at. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Megan to kind of walk us through some of the different bike park features.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sarah, and thanks for having me here. I'm Megan Bradley. I lead the bike park design team at American Ramp Company. Just quick overview of my background. I'm trained as a landscape architect, and I have a passion for mountain biking. I'm a national champion in women's cross-country mountain biking, and I currently coach high school teams and ride for fun. So I love being able to do this for my job every day. And Colorado is specifically one of my favorite places to go on vacation and ride my mountain bike. So extremely stoked to have this project. So I just wanted to start with that. And this is an overview of the park, the bike park, where it sits kind of in the master plan view. So I actually want to just go into the next slide, which shows the bike park closer up. So this is the slide I'm going to be spending most of the time on to describe things. There's a lot of content, so I will just break it down. Overview, we have 4 sections of bike park. So the main area is that pump track, which is it's made out of asphalt and it has that green edge. So in plan view, it has this very organic shape, and the asphalt pump track is kind of one of the main focuses, that and the bicycle playground, which I'll talk about after. But the asphalt pump track is made of asphalt, so the riding surface does not need to be maintained. It's all-wheel friendly, meaning bikes, scooters, skateboards. And for this design, we specifically wanted to have an adaptive and beginner pump track integrated with the main pump track. So what that means is you'll see, if we're just looking at the pump track, the loop on the right is the main track. It's larger. The rollers are a little bit bigger. The berms are a little bit deeper. Whereas the adaptive and beginner pump track, it can be ridden by a number of different riders, riders with disabilities. So the berms are much more mellow, and so are the rollers. So we're using that as both adaptive and beginner. And so that's kind of the overview of the pump track. Then to the left.
Size of it? Like,
Sorry, I think I hear one comment, but the volume's a little low.
Yeah. I was just gonna ask about the size of the pump track area. I'm just having a hard time visualizing how big that would be. Do you know, like in
Yeah.
feet roughly?
So this is about 17,000 square feet.
Okay.
I don't know, looked at it, and it didn't seem like it took up that much space in the Lions Club pond area, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like
80.
Oh, sorry. And I fish a lot over there too with my kids, and it wouldn't take away from that at all, where it's at, you know?
Yeah.
So it was in a good spot.
Conceptualize, like based on other asphalt pump tracks I've seen, like the one at, I don't know, Elgibel, for example. I don't know if you know how it would compare in size to that one.
Which town is that one in? Could you repeat?
Elgibel over by, in between, like by Basalt.
By Googling
They
it.
have a really sweet bike park over there.
Okay, I have to look that one up.
Crown Mountain, I think, is the name of the park itself.
The meeting is being recorded and zoomed, so we need to speak into microphones so people in the audience can hear us.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that pump track afterwards. That one's not coming into my search right away. But what I can do is after the call, send some example images of pump tracks of comparable size to this design, and that might help give a good visual.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and please feel free to stop me. I'm happy to answer questions along the way. So then, to the left of that is the bicycle playground. So this was the other part that we really wanted to focus on and have it in the center of the design, but also this is how we like to design bike parks that have a bicycle playground, is to have it near any type of main entry or main plaza or near parking, because then it gives easier and quicker access if parents are bringing their children to the bicycle playground. It's just right there. So this one, we have a lot of different playful features. So that's things like a tunnel that kids can ride through. I have an example image on the top of the screen of someone riding through some tunnel or some rings. There's a tunnel in the background. So things like that we like to incorporate into the design. And then yeah, that image that Sarah's hovering over, that shows one of the wooden bike features. And those are pretty key to these designs because we're using them to integrate skill building and specifically for momentum generation, for balance. And the features in the bicycle playground are much lower to the ground. They're much wider compared to the ones that we're designing into the skills course. Those ones are more intermediate and advanced. So then up on the northwest corner of the park is the jump lines. So we were really wanting to take into account feedback from the survey, specifically where people are calling for some progression. So these jumps are side-by-side tabletops. We have an image of that right above the jump line, and it shows wooden kicker ramps and then a dirt jump body. So the benefit of this is you can have a perfectly shaped takeoff because it's wood and the radius is set, and this doesn't have to be maintained and reshaped because the takeoff of a jump is the part that erodes the most and requires the most maintenance. So we have wooden kicker ramps and then dirt jump body. So a series of 3, and this is progressive in the way that we have 3-foot kickers for beginners and then 4-foot kickers for more intermediate riders. And then those lead into a berm turn and return trail. People can either session that jump line or go back to a different part of the park. And then we have the last section, which is the skills course. This is in the southeast corner of the bike park area. And we wanted to really make sure that we are respecting that buffer from the willows. So this is a more compact design for a skills trail, but still offering some variety of line choices. So in this loop, you can see there are parts where the trail splits, and then a rider could choose to go on a more advanced section that has a skinny feature, or they could go on a different section that has maybe a wider feature that just is different bike handling techniques. So that's the skills course design. And all of these riders can move around. We built in a circulation trail. So that's the overview of the bike park.
I have a question for you. On the skills course, I'm assuming that there are routes around all of these features that you don't, if you're heading towards it, you don't have to take the feature.
Absolutely. So yeah. And this is at a conceptual level, so some details like that are not visually shown, but every feature there is an option to completely avoid it. So in theory, if someone wanted to just ride on the loop, they could avoid all wooden features.
And I'll throw in, I didn't want to dive too deep into the survey for sake of time, but the survey was what American Ramp Company used largely to kind of decide what elements and to construct. And the elements that got the most love and support were actually the jumps and then in the berms and just kind of a skill area in general.
Okay.
So I think that's just something important to kind of consider because we started with this idea of a pump track and a bicycle playground as kind of the focus, but there has been demand for these other areas as well.
So what percentage are, I mean, in the survey, you broke it down by skill level. So what percentage are like beginner, intermediate, advanced of this part of this design?
Yeah, so do you want to speak to that, Megan?
Yes, I'm also just gonna look at my notes for survey results really quick. So in the survey, let's see, skill level, there were about 26 riders, beginner, intermediate, advanced. So 47% advanced riders, 44% intermediate, and then that leaves 9% beginner. The way that is being expressed in the design is one, when we see a survey that has a low number of beginners, one thing that tells us is, okay, so there are beginners that exist here, but that also might mean there isn't a space to bring in new beginners. So that's where things like, it could be a bicycle playground or the beginner pump track or some of the beginner features in the skills course. That's where they're welcome to come and start to learn some skill building techniques on their bike. For the intermediate and advanced, that's pretty split down the middle. So people know how to ride in Colorado. They have their bikes. Like there is a lot of, mountain bike infrastructure existing, but there also seems to be a need for the intermediate riders to advance to expert, and then a place for the advanced riders to continue building their skill. So where that manifests in this design is one, progressive jump lines. Of course, the 3-foot kickers are for beginners, but in that intermediate range, maybe those riders are more of a cross-country rider and they're really new to jumps. So that gives them a space for learning how to jump. And then maybe the advanced riders, they need some type of, let's say, a balance obstacle. So a lot of that is in the skills course. And then advanced riders can also ride the 4-foot jump section of the jump line. But where all of these skill levels meet is also in the asphalt pump track, because that can be ridden by a super beginner, really slow, just learning how to ride, or it can be ridden by an expert level rider. So we tried to design this so that it is balanced across the board.
I mean, I'm just thinking the advanced riders are probably going to go up on the trails in the mountains and not stay on the pump track necessarily. But if we're designing this to accommodate like children, don't we want more sort of beginner type features? And then, when we think about doing, lessons and training, to build that into this, to teach kids how to ride. I guess one of the other questions I had is around liability. And, what is the town's
Right. We
responsibility?
would have to work with our insurance company. I think a big piece of it is having appropriate signage. If you go to any of these bike parks, there's lots of, warnings and ride at your own risk and rules to kind of follow. I think there are still a lot of beginning features. This whole bicycle playground is still geared towards kind of like kiddos and beginning learners, as well as the pump track. And then specifically the adaptive beginner pump track would be for both beginners, and then we also wanted to, particularly given the presence of the National Sports Center for the Disabled and having a lot of disabled athletes in the area. NACD also has a newer mountain bike program that they started spearheading, I think this past summer, trying to have an option for those riders as well. And in talking to the NACD about their program, we thought it would be a perfect to be able to ride down from the resort, kind of go down the Fraser River Trail and use that pump track. But that was the focus when we started, Lewis, and we just heard a lot from kind of other people in the community. So I don't know if, we don't have too much time left. It looks like we have about 20 minutes if we wanted to hear from some of our community members and partners that are here or online, and get their thoughts.
I mean, I know this is
Workshop.
sort of an early conceptual design, but I think, getting more feedback from, people like Elliot or people that ride, I don't ride that much, but that ride a lot, would they utilize this, pump track, and, what are we designing it for? Do we want it to be more, kid friendly and have programs in terms of training and learning and, stuff like that? Or is this for advanced riders? Because it sounds like about 50% is for advanced, right? Close to it,
No, it sounds like.
No, I wouldn't say 50%.
47% or something.
Bike parks, and specifically the pump track portion of a bike park, the way that they're designed, they can accommodate the whole spectrum of skill level. So it's hard to split it exactly into a pie and give percentages, because a lot of it is going to overlap on the exact same trail.
So like they can do the skills course and skip a part that's too challenging. But yeah, why don't we hear from some of the folks here?
Yeah, hi, I'm Steve Clayback. I'm a board member on the recently formed Fraser Valley Mountain Bike Coalition. So really our purpose is to promote sustainable trail building, trail maintenance. We've been doing work days over the course of last summer. I'll keep that part short. But I guess one of the things that we encouraged people when filling out this survey, and something that we've thought about and looked at other similar bike parks while we were providing feedback for this project. And one concern with building something that only contains beginner features or very small beginner features is that kids will progress very quickly. They will progress a lot quicker than you think they will. And our concern is just that kids will outgrow the park very quickly, and then it won't see any use. A lot of the parks that we see that contain only that very, very beginner level things, and even like the bicycle playground, like that is probably that's where absolute beginners and young kids are going to start, but they're going to quickly progress. And we just don't want to see like an entire park that contains bicycle playground type of features, because it will, from experience seeing other parks, I think that it will not get used as much. So just having that broad spectrum of features, and like the small jump line and the skills park, our hope is that it gets the community more engaged, so you can have, you can bring your kids down and dad can ride the pump track, and bring the whole family down and make it something that everyone has something to do and grow into. And then just my last comment as more of that advanced rider. I do ride out at Trestle a lot, travel all over the country and ride. And I personally, would use this park, things like the jump line and the pump track and like skinnies and things like that on like the skills course. Like those are things that I would go down to. I'm one of those people that responded to the survey and said that I would use it multiple times a week probably. So just one example of someone that rides a lot and is
Okay,
involved in the
thank
bike
you.
community.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
But
Anybody else?
And I'll respond from a parent of kids standpoint. I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old who both ride usually when not injured. But both my kids would definitely use this, and I would say they are advanced riders. My son would love a jump line. He's 10 and he's he's ridden the jump line in Moab. He's ridden the jump line at Crown Mountain. And he would absolutely love it. And there's a lot of kids in this community who are intermediate to advanced level who I think would use this park a ton. Some of them, yes, have access to riding at Trestle. Some of them don't. And it's expensive to ride at Trestle. And so a lot of community members with kids who want to advance their skills, I think would use this park a ton. So to me, it's really exciting to have, yes, I think it's important to have beginner features for kids. I think it's awesome to think about adaptive athletes and the NSCD, but having some more advanced features for intermediate to advanced riders of all ages, because they live in this community, is really cool.
We do have Scott Ledeen from the rec district online. Scott, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. First of all, I think Sarah and the ARC team has done a really good job, looking at what could be in this space. I think this work was done back in 2017, and I know that there was a lot of discussion, and I was involved with some of the original master planning for this area that some people wanted to see a lot of real passive use and others maybe wanted to see more active use. I think, to provide a little bit of backstory, the rec district tried to work with a volunteer group on a very small section of the sports complex, on the northwest corner that was less than an acre, that we attempted to have a bike park back there. And truthfully, there was a lot of challenges with it. The soil composition, the layout of the jumps, the lack of water out there to maintain these facilities. And we ended up having a discussion amongst staff and our board to kind of eliminate it, because it did not meet the standards of what we considered to be Fraser Valley Recreation District facilities. And so, we want to work with the town on this. We think it's a super important piece. I think the beauty of this design is that it could be phased over time. I think the price tag will probably, shock everyone and say, well, wait a minute, but I think we can take some time and really look at this to make this a awesome community amenity. The rec district is supportive and is willing to we've already got our budget for 2024 established, but I think our board would be very supportive of being involved financially with this project and committing to long-term maintenance to make this work. This is exactly what we hear. Sometimes, the fact that we have a rec district, some of the questions, maybe at the town level, maybe don't get asked with regards to rec amenities and whatnot. And we, as a rec district, hear what the community wants, and we've heard loud and clear that they want a great. We know that we've got a great facility at Trestle, and it's a paid facility. But if we want to be a mountain bike capital, USA, and we want to really live up to that, we need these types of facilities. I think this would have a tremendous. It's so visible; it would have a tremendous impact on the local economy. It gives people a place and small families to go and explore before they head up to the ski area. Those downhill trestle itself, is intimidating. And this gives people an opportunity to progress and to be able to move on to that paid experience. But it's going to bring these people to town, and many of them are already here, and they're looking for this. And there was a lot of upset folks when we decided to remove it. But our facility was, besides those other pieces that I mentioned, it was a little out of sight, out of mind. This is so visible, and we're willing to be involved at many levels. And I know that it's a bigger project maybe than was originally anticipated, but I think this to approach it with a phased approach would be fantastic, and would love to see this happen.
Anybody else?
Thanks, Scott.
That was great to hear, Scott.
It's Elliot Leslie. I'm a co-owner of Skinny Traffic Trails, and we do quite a bit of the trail work around the region. But I guess I wanted to kind of second what Steve and then also Scott just said, that we're really fortunate to have Trestle right up the road, but there's not really much opportunity for progression there if you're not already qualified, and it's a really high consequence sort of experience. So having a facility like this that first of all is free and accessible, doesn't have limited operating hours. There's a lot of days where Trestle closes at 4 or 5, and that's when most people get off of work. So it's pretty limited opportunities. And also for kids, if they have a hard time getting down there because they're not old enough to drive. But like I said, a lot of this stuff at Trestle is super fun. I ride there a lot, and it's one of my fun things to do in the summer. But once you're on a trail, you're pretty much committed to either you have to be good enough to do this, or things can go sideways real fast. And having a pretty safe, controlled environment like this, where you could go and keep practicing a skill over and over, and then once you master that, there is like the next step up to go and work on either different skills or something a little more advanced. And then whether that's for kids or just adults or whoever, it provides a lot more opportunity and just a lot more accessibility.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think there are a lot of opportunities for kind of youth development, and talking with the schools and talking as well with the Mountain Bike Alliance. With Adam, he had mentioned interest that they have in some youth development programs and being able to use a facility like this. So I think it would be very much a community feature in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Sarah, I would second that. We would obviously look, I think Sally is on the call. Sally does some instruction, and we've got programs in the summertime that would absolutely take advantage of this space from a programming perspective. Consider this in my mind, this is similar to like the town of Winter Park taking on building a skate park, right? This is looking at what the community needs. This is looking at having the space available and what would be awesome for this community. And again, I'm excited about it. My kids are grown, and wouldn't be the ones using this, but I just think this is an awesome community amenity, and would love to see it be able to happen.
Great.
Anybody
Thanks
else
for-
online or in the audience?
Hello, Sarah. It's Sally.
Hi, Sally. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, I have been listening and I'm just so excited because I'm loving everything I'm hearing. And I think it's, so far everything's been thought out very well. And I just think it'll be a perfect fit. And, I like how we're not going to try to just make it another little St. Louis Creek. It's going to be something legit, something sustainable. I like the idea of the surface we're thinking of using because that'll be really sustainable. And yeah, I'm just really excited about all of it and wanted you to know you have my support.
Thank you. So I know we don't unfortunately have too much time left. I did, and I hate to end on budget numbers, but we have been having numbers coming in. These are estimates. We can work with them. There's some we can break. We likely would be looking at a more phased project unless we do get a very generous GoCo grant and some other funding comes in. But the bike park itself is landing around $1 million if you were to do all of this. There is a slight reduction in that. The numbers come down a bit. I think it was closer to 950, 960 if you do it all at once, because then they're only mobilizing equipment, and people once. We're looking, as we've talked before, about burying power lines out there, the constructed wetlands and drainage and kind of wildlife platform, and then that berm to try to separate the willows. We've got to get some better numbers in there, but just to kind of start with somewhere, it looks like it'd be kind of maybe around 100,000. And then the parking lot, this number should hopefully land lower as well, but their initial kind of conservative budget was about 500,000. So parking's not cheap. Ride your bikes to the park. So this is where we're at, but I would love to just kind of hear the board's thoughts in the few minutes we have left in terms of what direction you'd like us to move with this. And I can go back to the map here, and just again, kind of the overview to see where this fits in with the larger kind of Cousins area.
I'd like you to go after grants.
Yes.
He's been a very good grant writer. So far.
Batting pretty well so far. We'll see.
But not just grants. Are there other sponsors that would be interested in, maybe the rec center? I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah. Scott and I have talked, and he's got to talk with his board. We kind of missed their last budget cycle, but this, I think, realistically, as much as I had hoped to put stuff in the ground this coming summer, is probably more likely 2025. Maybe we can get started on some things this summer, but I think for that next budget cycle, they have shown support in helping to fund it. And we can talk with some of our other partners as well.
Seems like
any
the
other
road
revenue
access
sources?
in the parking lot are probably the priority to get that built in there, because then there'll be a place for them to stage from when they go to do their construction.
Yeah, we can look into what makes the most
Yeah.
sense in terms of that, and if that would help facilitate things.
Main thing we've been discussing with this is if this is what the community wants, we need to phase it in. I think that, for example, we could work through the Grant Foundation for a nonprofit arm for anybody who wants to donate to this and provide the financial write-offs for this type of project, which I think you're gonna get a lot of interest in people supporting this.
Well, Park's good, can they? $150,000 to bury power lines? A little steep.
That's an estimate. I'm still waiting for their numbers.
Yeah.
I
$800 a foot or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
not
I've called to get mine buried and I was like, oh, never mind.
yeah.
Yeah,
It,
it would be so nice to have it,
Wouldn't it be? I mean, yeah,
That
not
would
do
be the
it out,
time
but
to
maybe
do
they
it.
would want to donate that.
right?
Yeah, and that's a very rough number. They were hoping to get me numbers by next week, so I've got to check back in.
I
But
mean, we could do like naming sponsors as well. I'm sure there's some mountain bike companies out there that would love to.
And what about partnering with a resort on some level in terms of, a youth program or something? I mean, I don't know, just sort of think about different possibilities. What about concessions? Are we gonna have any concessions there? I mean,
is that the plan? I mean, I could see having events and doing like food trucks or things like that.
The access road that
There's
goes all the way
Safeway
down.
already.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's another
Awesome.
revenue source.
I've heard rumors our new mountain bike alliance might be fundraising for mountain bike causes.
Yeah. It's exciting. It's really
awesome.
exciting.
I-
And you did a
Right.
wonderful job putting together this plan.
Yeah, I've been a
Right.
part of the meetings, but this is a huge jump compared to the last meeting we were in, and I love the design. I love the progression of it from beginner to advanced. I think it's awesome.
It all sounds great, Sarah. So what kind of direction do you need from us?
Well, if it all sounds great, I mean, we want to go after the whole enchilada, then we'll start, looking for funding and writing grants. The GoCo concept paper for their next round is due next week. So I'm working with folks on that, and that'll be our first kind of starting point, and then we'll see what else is out there.
Great.
That's a good question. I know a lot of them have gotten grant funding. Megan, do you know how a lot of your communities have funded their bike parks? In Bentonville, I think Walmart funds a lot of them.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get Murdoch's on board.
Yeah, Bentonville, that one is a special case. It is a lot of grant funding, or just it really varies by project. Colorado, yeah, the GoCo grant, it just varies a lot.
Is that like lottery money?
It is, yeah. Great Outdoors Colorado. So they have some different things. They do like land preservation, but then they have community impact funds, which is what we would be going after. That focus on getting people outside and
So this is all good, but we've got a lot of other topics tonight.
yes. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your input. If anybody does have any additional input, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call, and I'll keep working with Megan on finalizing the design and see what we can do funding wise. Thank you.
Thank you,
guys.
Sarah.
Thank you all for
Everybody.
coming.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're ready for our regular meeting. And let's do roll call. I don't know.
Brian Cirkvenich.
Parnell Quinn.
Katie Souls,
Louis Gregory.
Eileen Waldo.
I believe Katie Fisher is here. Yep. She just had to step out for a moment.
We're waiting for roll call, Katie.
Sorry. Come over here now.
Katie Fisher.
Okay. Now, on the approval of the agenda, but it has been requested that number C on the consent agenda be moved to, oh, would we call it D1? On the discussion and possible action. So between after D and before E.
Okay, and you're moving C, says he's in cap.
C, and then also the resolution number on that is 08 instead of 07.
Forgot resolution numbers.
So is there
That's
anything
so
else?
move.
What? You so move?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? Any opposed? Okay. Now we go to the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from January 3rd. And ordinance 511, amending ordinance numbers.
I move to approve the consent agenda as changed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we come to the open forum part of the meeting, which is for business that's not on the agenda. If you have something, please, we'll do in-house first. I don't think we have anybody here, but, and you go to the microphone and you have 3 minutes. The same rules apply for people online. Is there anyone in the house that wants to speak? Online, raise your hand if you do. Okay. Now we'll move to the discussion and possible action regarding the list of things, and the first on is the treasurer's report by Lori.
Good evening. How are you guys tonight? Good, Lori. Okay. Go ahead, next slide. Thanks. We're gonna have the statement of funds and the sale tax revenue. Okay, so there's December. It finally happened, that big drop in the general fund reserves I've been talking about all last fall. There it is. Because we did make all the, those larger payments to Conroy, getting the bathrooms finished and some of the other projects that we were wrapping up for the year. The good thing is that I have to adjust and make a few corrections on a submittal I made to DOLA for matching funds for the bathrooms. I'll get that corrected and we'll be receiving the matching fund shortly. But the revenues started to, the general fund, the blue portion started to come back up already as of January 1st. So we're gonna start climbing back up until our next big projects come along. Then the next slide. Here's your tax revenues for this year. Sales tax revenue totaled out at $6,183,866. This averaged out to about a $515,322 per month tax revenue. And this wound up being about a 1.2% increase. Yes, I meant over 2022. In my defense, I was left unsupervised, okay? So I should have gotten somebody to proofread for me. And I was going too fast. But I think overall, I have not had an opportunity to catch up with some of my compatriots in the other municipalities to see how they came in. But I think Fraser still managed to trend just a little bit better than last year. Due to, we had some great stuff going on. I was curious, this was just out of pure curiosity and learning how to use the amount of data I get out of Colorado Department of Revenue. I wasn't able to put it on a pretty spreadsheet because I'm still getting my all my spreadsheet abilities dusted off that I haven't used for a long time. I did look at short-term rental performance. I didn't have time to see if we had a trend or how to figure out a trend but I'm going to be tracking this a little bit more this year just to see where it's coming in. Short-term rental came in at $719,840 for the entire year, which wound up pretty consistently across the year at about 11% of our sales tax revenue. So thought that might be fun information. So if there any questions?
Okay, thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
Lori, thank you. Okay, now we have our discussion on Victoria Village Master Plan. And we have Todd and Matt and Troy here. And Nick.
Evening, everybody.
Todd, yeah. Todd.
My colleague Matt Ginsburg is on the line. He said that the screen isn't being shared online.
Oh.
So
You make Matt Ginsburg a co-host? Oh, yes.
There he is.
And Matt, do you have the presentation up to share, or is that something that
Oh, yeah, sure. I can share it.
would work well?
So will we be driving it from this end, or is Matt gonna?
Matt's gonna drive it.
All right.
So, okay. Wow.
So that while you're pulling that up, I'll just kind of make some brief introductions. So good evening. My name's Todd Moore with Mountain Affordable Housing Development. I'm the principal, one of the principals with the firm. Matt Ginsburg is the other. We've been here before you before with other updates and also about a year ago as we went through our initial presentation for selection to do the development there. Since then, we've had a chance to meet with many of you through the master planning process and the community engagement and talking about some of the desires and some of the opportunities that we've had with the site. And those have since kind of been memorialized through the master planning process. But today we're really here just to give a process update and talk about where we are, what we've been doing, what our path forward is. We'll provide a financial overview because I think there's probably a number of questions around that. And then also wanted to introduce Troy and Rob Nyberg with Big Valley. They're our construction partner with part of the team. So we've asked them to be here with us just to talk more about their commitment, their excitement, their plans for moving forward this year, and what that's going to look like. So we have a lot of information to go through. We probably don't have as much time to go through it as we would like, but let's just go. If we could ask that if there's any questions, that they maybe just get held to the end, and then we can have a Q&A session at that point, unless something is a burning platform and we need to stop and address it.
Todd, I'm sorry, could you speak up, or is your microphone on? I can't tell.
Is that any better?
We don't have
Got that
speakers
soft
up here.
voice.
Are speakers, Antoinette, do speakers work up here now?
Yeah, they are.
How's that? Any better? All right, we'll do the best we can then. So in terms of a summary, I'm gonna kind of go along on my paper copy here because I can't quite read the screen from here, but first of all, I just wanted to say that we've been pushing forward over the last year with the town as we've gained approval with the master plan. We accomplished that in spring to summer timeframe of 2023. We've been developing plans to have an early childhood education center at Victoria Village, which is one of the greatest community needs. And we'll talk more about what that program looks like, how it's being incorporated into the plan, and what that means from a space allocation and so forth. We've launched the permitting processes primarily at this point for the environmental permits. We've been working side by side with Grand Environmental, who's handling the U.S. Corps of Engineers permitting for the protected natural areas of the site, which is roughly 1/3 of the Victoria Village site. There are some nuances around that because we also have floodplain and floodway, and so our civil engineering engineer is actually working on the FEMA permits to allow us to redefine those wetlands and also allow us to get the St. Louis Creek crossing that we're looking for. But now that we've kind of used what is those two things, which are the primary drivers of how we're phasing the project, which we'll talk about here in a minute. We're now moving forward. We expect things to accelerate as we get into 2024 and move towards groundbreaking. Looking forward, I guess, is some of the key drivers. It's really going to be getting our platting and site plan done and approved. We obviously know that there's a timely process that's involved with the staff planners as well as the other folks that will be doing the reviews, the engineering reviews. So we have a timeline that allows us to go through that. And we're looking for final plat recordation in mid to late July. So, we'll have to be working side by side with the town and the planning commission and the folks at Baseline and Merrick to make that happen. Also, we are working on the capital stack and the financing for the project. Matt will talk more about that when we get to it, and what the sources look like, and how the design documents. So we'll talk about the integration of this, but getting through engineering and design are also prerequisites for being able to close on the different financing sources for the project. So they're all part of due diligence records that any lender would ask for, whether it's public or private. So getting through engineering and design over the next 5 to 6 months on a building by building basis, as well as the infrastructure, is another key focus for us. So for tonight, basically we want to talk about summarize what we've done over the last year, go through the phasing and the project need. We'll have a presentation on the project schedule. There's, we'll talk about the general phasing plan, the pre-construction activities, and then ultimately what the construction sequencing looks like and the overall durations from, say, start of infrastructure work in the field through initial certificates of occupancy for the various residences. We'll talk about financial management, meaning, where are we contract wise with our fee and where we are in terms of expenditures against our contract value and what we are looking for going forward as we move through 2024. And then finish up with some next steps, and then we'll ask Big Valley to come up and say a few words for us. So some of the key elements, I think, of the master plan, just to recap. We started out, with a number of additional buildings. They were 8 in count. We're now down to 4 residential buildings and then 2 rows of townhomes. We initially were planning on about 165 residential units with options for some commercial in building D, which we can go through. But as some of you may know, we were able to work with the town to have an additional story added to each of the buildings. So the great thing about that is we now have a planned density of about 195 to 200 units as an opportunity. But we also can have the option of saying, let's go with the 175 units and incorporate the early childhood education center, as well as some other commercial space, which could be used for example, a post office annex and or even to relocate the post office if that's, what's ultimately desired and becomes feasible. So we're working on that as well. So this is the overall arrangement. As you can see, we'll talk about the phasing, but building A is on the far northwest corner. Then as we come south across St. Louis Creek, that's building B. Building C is the largest of the residential buildings, kind of in the middle of the page. And then we have D in the southwest corner, which is where the post office annex would go, or some additional commercial space for either convenience store or coffee shop or whatever. And then building E is on the southeast corner of the site. And that's where the early childhood education center is planning to go. And then the two yellows in the middle, those are the townhomes with a total of 13 there. And you can see we've got 7 that will be backing to the conservation easement, which will be very nice for them to open up onto the green space. And then we have 6 facing south, just adjacent to the pocket park. Some other things that we've done, we've talked about community engagement, which has led us to the incorporation of early childhood education and daycare. We've conducted the geotechnical investigation and have a soils report for that. Obviously, that will inform and be an input to architectural design, structural design, as well as utilities. Long and short of it is we have a fairly high water table there, as you might imagine. So the buildings will not be able to accommodate foundations, but we'll likely do a slab on grade. We'll still incorporate storage, and with the extra story, I think we're pretty well positioned. Surveying and topographic mapping was previously completed. We re-engaged Core to come back and add additional data points and do topography for that survey. There's some additional survey punch items that we want them to conduct in terms of giving us some elevations along the culvert and the crossing at US 40, as well as on the east side, where the creek passes under the road there. And then we need a little bit more profile information in terms of the creek itself, but that should be wrapped up here in the next few weeks. So it dovetails well. Next would be utility development design. So we do have a preliminary utility plan that we've reviewed with the town and Public Works. So there's some existing utilities that are currently in the conservation easement that we are going to see about. Well, for sure, we're going to abandon them, but we're going to see about whether there's an opportunity to relocate or to remove them as well. So we have that in the works, but we also have a preliminary design for the utilities for gas and electric and water and sewer and internet connectivity through Comcast. We've also completed a traffic study last year. We hired a traffic engineer to come out and they did traffic counts and measurements in October. And we've asked them to model the traffic based on maximum density with a full allocation of 10,000 square feet to grandkids for early childhood education center, as well as 5,000 square feet for a possible post office use. So as of now, we were only planning to do 3,000 commercial for whether it's a post office annex and some other things instead of 5. And we've asked them to model 10,000 square feet for a childhood education center as opposed to 7 or 8,000 square feet, which is more likely the footprint that they'll be working in. So net result of that is there are no additional intersection or other modifications that will be needed to accommodate the planned dwelling units at Victoria Village. So we're very pleased about that. So we mentioned earlier about environmental permitting, and there's really two kinds of permits that fall into this category. Both are in process. The permitting through the U.S. Corps of Engineers is a shorter process, but Grand Environmental is working on that, and it's primarily to redefine the conservation easement or protected natural area. You know, we've kind of talked about how the site of the current conservation easement is more like a, I don't know, a bone-in ribeye steak or, you know, a pork chop or something like that. But the plan is to redefine those boundaries so that the area to the east of the north-south thoroughfare will be the new conservation easement, and the handle that goes along St. Louis Creek will be removed from the P&A. So that's the current plan, and that's what the permit is moving forward with this time. So the Early Childhood Education Center is in initial design, and Matt will be able to talk to that here in a little bit because he's been doing the programming, space planning, and some of the conceptual design on that space with grandkids. And I guess lastly, we've been working on the pro forma and the financial modeling, determining the capital stack for the project so that we have a viable plan going forward. Long and short of that is that the initial plan was to do a low-income housing tax credit package for some of the buildings. As it turns out that the timing of that isn't currently very good because we still have other competitive projects here in Fraser that aren't fully leased up. And so Victoria Village will not be, would not be competitive and would not be awarded LIHTC financing until we have the other project fully absorbed. So we've moved into a different direction, first with middle income housing authority bonds as a potential, and now we're looking at the agency financing as well. So Matt can walk us through all of that. Matt, if you're on the line, if you could just talk briefly, please, about the floor plan and the programming for the Early Childhood Education Center.
Yes, good evening. I'm sorry that Birth at Pass isn't open and I'm not there. But I would like to mention that we had a wonderful meeting with the governor there on Friday afternoon about the project, and he seemed enthused, amongst other things, about the inclusion of the early childcare center with grandkids. So this is, you know, you try to find different places to fit things in logically in a presentation like this, and this just sort of fell in the other category, but I stuck it up front because I think it's important to the community. This is the general layout. We're actually probably going to take away some of these gray numbered boxes on the left-hand side here to grab a little bit more space for the Early Childhood Education Center for grandkids. You know, it's basically 2 rooms per age group from infant through to preschool. You know, modest amount of conference or office space, kitchen space, and some you know, gross motor room, which as I understand it is often called the tumble room. So you know, we're on sort of the second iteration of design here. That we've spent a lot of time making sure it complies, of course, with the early childhood education regs. And we're working together with grandkids on their pro forma and possible ways to fund both upfront and over time, the cost of a lease here, which is, a substantial investment on their part compared to what they're currently budgeted for. Of course, this is built for purpose space. It's going to allow them to expand significantly and accommodate what the community needs. So it's a well worth it, but it's like all things that we'll talk about tonight, it's not without its challenges.
So as we kind of move forward from there and get into phasing, just the high need for the early childhood education center and daycare is also kind of serving as an input to our phasing plan and the order of our design and construction. So, based on need, well, let me back up a second. So what we have on the screen now is the phasing plan. And you can see that we have building C, D, and E on the south side of the site as part of phase one. And that's the phase that we're looking to break ground on this summer or late summer. And then the stuff that's to the north, building A, B, and townhouses are in phase two. So the reason for that, as we mentioned before, is because of the interaction with the Corps of Engineers permit that has to be in place, as well as the work with FEMA to make sure that we have the ability to kind of redefine and mitigate some of the wetlands and floodplain, and also to be able to establish the crossing of St. Louis Creek. So by staying with the buildings to the south, we're able to do that without any further adjustments to the conservation easement as it is, or for St. Louis Creek crossing. So in the event that something goes snafu and that process takes longer than what we've allotted for, we still have the ability to meet a significant part of the demand through phase one. So C, D, and E to the south are part of phase one. We're also including the design and the platting of the townhouses as part of phase one. But as we sit here now, we are not planning to break ground on the townhouses this year. That would be part of phase two. So, but we want to make sure we get the design, we get the infrastructure to support those in the event that, we need a contingency plan. So in terms of the order of things, as you can see here, we have design, working on the site plan and the planning and the entitlements now, and that will continue through the end of Q3. And that will also include our construction permits, which we'll be working with the town on. Phase one groundbreaking, we're showing, roughly at the start of Q3, which is the blue bar on our sheets here. And the plan is to start with site preparation and the phase one infrastructure in advance of the vertical construction. So we're hoping that we can get that started in the June, July timeframe, and get the majority of the underground in before we go vertical. In the next bar down, you can see the St. Louis Creek bridge permitting, which is the work with FEMA. That does have a 12 to 18 month timeline. We're planning on about 16 months for that, but that has to be done before we can go ahead and install the bridge that goes across St. Louis Creek. But the way it all works out is we should be able to get that bridge in place by the time we get construction completion on phase one, so that we have the ability to finish that north-south thoroughfare by the time we have residents moving in. So even though that comes later, it should still be in time and with a sufficient allotment for getting through that FEMA process. And then you can see the kind of the orangish bar on there, which is roughly in Q3 of 2025. And that's when we plan to do the actual bridge.
Todd still there? Is this my cue to present, Todd?
You want to continue?
Yes, thank you. So lastly, the bottom green bar on our phasing plan shows the planned groundbreaking for phase two, which is currently scheduled for the summer of 2025. Again, we would start with the infrastructure work for phase two and then work through the vertical construction there. The bar is showing, starting in the second quarter of 2025, but realistically, it's the end of the second quarter, in that May timeframe, conditions permitting. So, anyways, that's the plan for that. As it stands, we anticipate being able to complete all of phase two by the end of 2026, so that we'll have all of the units complete and ready for residences to move in as we get into that third and fourth quarter of 26. I anticipate that we will have some follow-on closeout activities in the first quarter of or second quarter of 2027, perhaps related to punch list or landscaping or other exterior items that we weren't able to finish in the winter if it's that severe. But right now, we're planning to have the entire project done by the end of 2026. Have a couple more bullets here on phasing. We talked a little bit about what is actually driving the phasing in terms of expected market uptake, which really is informed by the survey that we've conducted. So we've had a few hundred respondents to that. And you can see that the data suggests that 75% fall into 80% or greater AMI bracket, which is important. And then that there's some competing projects as well, as we talked about the Mills, which has had also slightly lower uptake at some of the lower AMI ranges. And then some interest rate implications for sale homes. And the other key drivers, as we talked about, are the environmental conditions and permitting needed for the conservation easement and the floodplain and floodway. So Matt, if you wouldn't mind running us through the building details by phase, please, that would be great.
Sure. So folks, the blue is phase one, which is really what we'll focus on there, across 3 buildings, C, D, and E. We're looking at about 97 units. That's maybe a little lower yield than we've on those 3 buildings we looked at in the past because of the commercial space in D and E. We over the next let's say 30 to 60 days, we'll be making the decisions about whether those stick, whether the post office is going to come in or some other commercial space. In D, of course, in E, we've spent a lot of time with grandkids, and we expect to get ourselves to an agreement and move forward with them in the base of building E. As has been sort of mentioned here a couple of times, at least phase one for this moment in time is going to be geared towards middle income housing. So 80 to X, let's say 200-ish% AMI. Why? For all the reasons reviewed before. One, as you'll see in the next couple of slides, it really looks like that's actually where the demand is. Two, there's existing opportunities for people in the lower income range, and it's important to support our community partners in getting those filled up here, and also the state and federal government have an opinion about getting them filled up before they give you more tax credits for those. And so these buildings are currently, per the underwriting, the pro forma, target around an average overall AMI of 165%. That is in compliance with the 50% at 120% AMI covenant under the Operation Turnkey Grant, which the town used to purchase the land. That's sort of been, I think, when building a pro forma for a real estate project, there's it's a multivariate equation. So you need to kind of find some way to stick a point in the ground, and that's been one of the points that we've stuck in the ground, since you did borrow the money, and we must remain in compliance with that requirement. There's probably some nuance to how we develop phase two, and being able to manage that requirement as well over the development of phase two. I'm going to abstain from discussion of phase two because it's coming later, and primarily what we're talking about is what we're going to get in the ground this year, which is phase one. And as you can see, most of phase two is sort of TBD. It may make a lot of sense in the future to do a LIHTC project in one of those buildings, A or B, as a standalone project, or across both. It's going to be need driven. It's going to be execution driven based on the first phase, and based on what what the community's sort of symbiosis with the project becomes over the next 18 to 24 months. Sorry, I can't actually see my screen, so I've got another screen over here that I'm reading from. So one of the points that we've made here a couple times is why are we embracing the middle income opportunity as opposed to sort of LIHTC, which is what we showed up a year ago and expected to do. We conducted a survey over the course of much of 2023. We had about 202-ish respondents, and we asked 16 or 17 different questions about where they lived in the county, where they worked, how long they'd been there, what their desires were in terms of number of bedrooms or rent or own, etc. There's of course a lot of people looking to own. Those are very difficult projects to finance because all of the subsidization comes up front. So that's also part of the reason for putting off those townhome opportunities to the second phase here, because we're sort of the worst time to make those affordable is when rates are high. And based on my morning reading again today, it looks like Wall Street believes that rates will come down towards the end of the year. So it would be good to put those off a little bit. It'll make them more affordable for everybody. As it pertains to AMIs in particular, as you can see in the red box on the left-hand side, based on our collection of data, there's 75% of the 200 respondents had 80% or more income levels, 80% or more AMI income level. On the right-hand side, I put the equivalent 2023 monthly rent for a 2-bedroom, just so you can kind of get a sense for what those AMI levels translate into. Some of you are business owners, so you're probably thinking about who can afford what here. That should help you. Then if you take a look at the bottom of the page, these are rental units needs table from the 2022 Fraser River Valley Housing Needs Assessment study. If you look purely at AMI, the 80% and above gives you something like 50%. What I've circled on the page is the 60% and above, because if you look at the affordable rents that they're showing there, 1,400 and above, or 1,410 and above, that's actually closer to sort of like 70% AMI on our table above that, right? So we're just making a small adjustment, and you end up right around 71% again. So moral of the story, let's say above 2/3 and maybe around 3/4 of the population are above 80% AMI. And if we're building, 100 homes here, we ought to address that. So that's the logic in pivoting towards a middle income housing project here. Just so people can kind of get an idea of where the range of rents that we might be targeting are. There's the 80 to 240% and 0 to 4 bedroom rents. I don't think that some of those are realistic, but that's what the numbers and the rules suggest, right? So we're targeting around the 165%. So that's an average of things on either side of 165. Second piece of design informing data for us here was the number of bedrooms requested by folks on the survey. Overwhelmingly that was 2 bedrooms, and then with a significant preference towards 3 over 1 bedrooms. The data is imperfect, as all data is, or most data in this case. People put ranges on, so there's a little bit of interpretation there. But in general, we think that the need in the community is probably towards higher bedroom counts, for middle income families, which kind of makes some logical sense. The challenge with that is that on sort of a per square foot basis, a 3-bedroom will attract less rent than a studio or a 1-bedroom. And so to the extent that we're gearing the project more towards the need here, we're also sort of creating a little bit of our own issue around the needing to find more gap filling financing if we're lowering the overall rental income of the property. Todd, master schedule, back to you.
Great, thanks, Matt. We've talked about the phasing in the high level that you can see in the bar chart there. But I did want to go through some of the key milestones that we're facing here over the next 7 to 8 months and go through those. Some of these relate to our commitments to get the design team going and get them under contract. And some of them relate to our engagement with the town and the planning commission. And some of them relate to our engagement with Big Valley and others to make sure that we're geared up and ready to go. But the first is executing the architectural agreement. As you may know, we've also teamed with Eric Smith Architects, and they've helped us with some of the initial conceptual design. You may recall seeing some of the renderings on the building elevations for the different buildings in the community. And I personally think they look outstanding. I think it's something that we can all be proud of. But nonetheless, we have to re-engage them for their architectural services for design development and construction documentation. Next is finalizing the site plan. So between that and completing the preliminary plat, those two are what we need to do in order to be ready to apply for initial review with the town planners. And we're targeting March 8th for that. So we have a number of design related activities that are leading up to that. The other item that falls in here during February is to pull together our partnership arrangements with the town. And we'd like to be able to structure this development similar to how we are delivering the Hideaway Junction affordable houses in Winter Park. I think it makes sense. It's financeable. And I think ultimately puts the town in a good, strong position. The next is the finalizing terms for senior and subordinated debt and expected gap sources. So, as we've been talking about, we've shifted the financing plan for the project a couple times based on market conditions. But, now we're in a situation where we understand what the sources and uses are and the targets for those sources. And so we want to finalize those and the amount of gap or the sources to fill the gap, if you will, as we move through into March by the 15th. So on the one hand, we talk about wanting to submit the site plan and the preliminary plat to planning on March 8th. We're also then looking for the planning commission's approval of that site plan and plat by the April 24th planning commission meeting. So a lot of work to do. I'm sure Garrett will be of great assistance with that because he's going to help us by running point on that and see if we can keep on track. We're also looking to complete the grading, utility, and infrastructure design by the end of April, the 26th year. So we do have a good, I think, valid utility plan, but we don't have the grading yet. So the underground utilities, we're already socializing with the town. And, once we have the grading plan in place, then, we'll have that finished and be ready to go as well. It's likely that we're going to come looking for a grading permit to allow us to get an early start this summer, as opposed to waiting until we're ready to go vertical. But this milestone for finishing the grading plan will put us in a position to approach the town for the grading permit. Design development completion for the first 3 buildings we have here by April 26th. And so the design development is the level of completion that we will need in order to be able to submit each building's plans to the planning commission for design approval. So we want to have those ready for that. It'll also allow us to generate the initial floor plans and elevations that we'll need for some of the other work that we're doing. So and you can see here, it's the order of progress will be buildings then D, and then C. Big Valley doesn't know this yet, but our target is to execute construction agreements by the end of May. So we'd like to be able to do that sooner, but we'll get it done. We've negotiated successfully on many other contracts with Big Valley. So we really have appropriate models to begin with, so it shouldn't be a big deal. So next would be the US Corps of Engineers permit. We think that's a 3 to 6 month process, according to our discussions with Grand Environmental. Based on where we are today, we're allowing for a 6-month period from where we are. So that puts us with the permit in hand for the redefinement of the protected natural area by the end of June, the 28th. And that then precedes groundbreaking on the utilities and infrastructure on July 1st. Because some of the existing utilities are in conservation easement, we want to make sure that we have our ducks lined up, no pun intended, but so that we can begin working there if we're able to. Construction documentation. So we're looking for the final plans and specifications for the first 3 buildings by July 19th. All of this Obviously, we're not gonna do them all at the same time, but as construction documents are ready, then we will be approaching the town for our building permits. And we'll be doing that as soon as we can. But while we'll start in likely in late May or June for the permits on the first building, they'll come sequentially as we move through each of the first three. But what that means is that after we have construction documents for the last building, building C, then we'll bring those forward for our final permit sometime in mid to late July. Next key milestone is closing and funding on the construction loan, which we're targeting July 26th. All of these really are prerequisites for getting us to that point. Because a lot of the documentation, whether it's the plat, the site plan, the permits, the construction documents, the executed agreements are all prerequisites for being able to close on construction loans. So it's imperative that we have those in place in order to be able to close on funding. And then groundbreaking on Building E, which would be the first, we're showing is September 2nd. We'd like to be able to beat that and bring that forward a month, but we're gonna have we're gonna need to do a lot of work together in order to be able to get there. And obviously we'll need the cooperation of planning, and we'll need to have the cooperation of the town as we work through that and make sure that we get the appropriate design approvals. But we have, I think, we've allowed for sufficient time in accordance with the general timeframes that are outlined in the town's guidelines. And so if we can stick to that, then we're in good shape. And then lastly, although it's not for this year, but we've outlined that we're targeting getting the first COs in mid-December of 2025. We've included here, I don't plan to walk through this just for timing, but we've included information here on some of the detailed activities to show the sequencing and the duration of the pre-construction activities that lead up to the milestones that we just walked through, as well as the overall design durations down at the bottom in gray. So if there's any specific questions on it, I was happy to address them, when we're done, but and then on the following page, we have the planned construction schedule to show how we'd like to be able to start mobilization and site preparation in June, and then with utility relocation in July, and then the phase one infrastructure in August and September. We're gonna work as hard as we can to try to advance that, but that's the way we have it scheduled right now, with the starting of building E in 1st of September, and then each successive building would start about a month after that. Then, of course, you can see the overall durations of approximately 15 or 16 months, depending on winter conditions, in terms of when we'll be ready for the COs. Phase two, you can see, follows somewhat of a similar plan, but starting in 2025. So the next piece would be just talk about a recap of where we are relative to our current pre-construction agreement with the town, what the budget was, what we spent, what the path forward looks like in terms of additional funds that we anticipate committing and spending here in 2024. So Matt, if I could, I'll let you run us through this.
Yes, by all means. So at the outset of the engagement in early 2023, like the end of January, early February last year, we agreed contract with the first two columns of this budget in here. So we expected to incur $762,715 on the dot dollars for planning and programming efforts in 2023, and then we estimated about 3.2 million in design and pre-construction for the overall project at the time, which wasn't definitively phased in multiple phases over multiple years. The total budget for that was 3.9. you know, just to put a point on it, what you should think about is these are the costs that are likely to be incurred, we expect to be incurred before we get to groundbreaking. And so, you know, these are generally sort of equity costs. If you were doing a privately funded project, these are, in this case, costs that the town or other sort of grant funding type opportunities are going to need to fund, at least initially. We came in about $400,000 inside of the budget, and only spent about $350,000 last year. Some due to prudent management, some due to not entering into as great a detail in some of the development items as we had hoped to. And also, you know, there would have been a significant public finance spend in preparing for a LIHTC program, which, you know, once we decided not to do that we didn't incur those costs. So what we expect going forward to get to construction as on the schedule that Todd's laid out here is an incremental $2.9 million. It's laid out in sort of reasonable detail above here. To summarize, that's about 2.1 in architectural, engineering, planning, and contingency dollars, and the remainder in legal fees, expenses, and a couple of other small categories here. So this is this is the budget to take us where we need to go in order to put the project in the ground, right? Todd, you want to add anything to this page?
No, not really, other than that, you know, some of the budget that was approved for 2023, some of it will be required in 2024, so that there's an incremental obligation, if you will, for 2024 to round out the cost for pre-construction.
All right.
Carryover?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's the total cash cost that we would budget to incur this year before we had a construction loan to draw from, for instance, is this 2.9 million number. That means what we've done to date, where we are at the moment, and then where we need to take it, the additional is 2.9. Now, what we did to date was $400,000 cheaper, less expensive than what we had expected to do to date. And so if you're thinking from a budgeting standpoint, one would expect that you had a surplus of $400,000 in 2023. And so your sort of incremental commitment here to the project would be 2.4 million. But just to make sure it wasn't confusing, we didn't end up with the wrong number out there. And everybody got, I'm sure it is confusing anyway, but everybody got focused on the wrong thing. The cash number is 2.9 million. We can go into, you know, further detail after, well, when we get to the end, and welcome questions. Okay, next page. Because that's me. Okay, I think we've discussed a page like this before. I'm not going to belabor the LIHTC point. That's not something we're focused on right now. The major portion of the capital stack that we need to secure is the senior loan portion. We have been expecting to avail ourselves of the tax-exempt bond market, which would mean that either Town of Fraser, you know, a tax-exempt municipal issuer, or the Fraser River Valley Housing Partnership, subject to the IGA between the cities around the county, would be able to access the public bond market either to traditional, muni bond investors, or through a private placement with a bank lender who buys municipal tax-exempt bonds for any number of reasons. The advantage to that approach is a very high loan-to-cost advance rate, which makes the rest of the capital stack a lot easier because there's less capital stack to fill. and a very long, 40 or even sometimes more year amortization. And so if you think about being in the worst market in memorable history for financing housing projects, costs are the highest and rates are high, although we again hope that they are on their way the other direction. Being able to amortize those higher costs over a longer period of time is like the most attractive thing, right? Now, unfortunately, others have, who've come before us across the country who sell municipal bonds of similar nature to other people or to people who buy them, which is a limited group, have filled up that bond market. And so rates are a bit higher than, sort of north of the 7% kind of range. Whereas typically, a tax exempt bond has a lower rate because it's tax exempt. So the logic's a little off, the market's a little dislocated, and we're not getting any help there. There's a couple other features there that make it less competitive at the moment, but let's generally blame it on rates, as with everything else. So we are now at a third option called the agency loan, which is a agency bond, either bought or insured by Freddie Mac. And it's another federal funding product. These are going to be limited to 80% loan to cost, but really ultimately driven by debt service coverage ratio and overall amortization. I'll go into the details of that versus the tax exempt on the next slide, so we can talk about that. So where that and just, I don't know if you can see my highlighting of the screen, but that's this section here. So this is the most likely senior financing source for our project. That means that we have more non-dilutive gap financing to find. Non-dilutive gap financing options that we are working on. Your Town of Fraser staff, with our support, are dutifully working on the Stronger Communities Infrastructure Grant, which might be up to $4 million of early capital in for the purposes of building infrastructure. Some nuance on what it can be used for, but in general, it's for infrastructure, and it requires about a 20% match. I think we're also applying to the More Housing Now grant, as well as we've started a conversation with the Fraser River Valley Housing Partnership to see what opportunities there are with them to support the project. Just a point here. At some point it'll dawn on you like, oh gosh, I wish I knew exactly how I was going to finance the project. And what I would want to reiterate, which Todd has pointed out earlier, is in order to be competitive in all these, let's call all of these favors, right? They're super competitive processes. There's limited dollars. Everybody is having trouble with housing, so everybody's competing for this non-dilutive thing section here. So the further along you are with development, the closer you are to putting your project in the ground, the more things that you've included, like the learning center, like energy efficiency, though I don't have a slide on it, but we'll talk about it, I promise. That we are close to building and that we will break ground this year, et cetera, which means incurring the cost to do all those things now, the more likely we are to get that funding. Also creating the right type of je ne sais quoi around the project, as we tried to do last week, is helpful as well. And then equity in this case is going to be a component of the capital stack here, just given what's available, which, depending on how the non-dilutive financing shakes out and where rates are at the time that we have to actually go to the market and close the loan, may be something that is we're able to find sort of traditional real estate equity investors for, or we may be looking at impact kind of investors that have a, let's say, double bottom line. So we are working half a dozen to a dozen financing conversations based on the phasing plan and pro forma that we've landed on here towards the end of last year. I'm gonna go quickly through this. If we have more questions, we can come back later for differences here. So these are the muni bonds that we'd really hoped that we were going to be able to access. This is the agency senior debt financing that we probably will access. We would have expected rates to be lower than these. That would be the primary reason for for engaging in this effort here. The amortization period is longer. The DSCR is lower. You know, the one sort of downside is we would have to hold a significant portion of the issuance in reserve accounts, which is kind of a drag. But typically, rate, DSCR, and amortization would defeat that. Just for quick recap on the high finance world, obviously the interest rate is the percentage of the principal that we're going to have to pay as cost every year. The debt service coverage ratio means you take the net revenues, so revenues less cost of your project, and you divide it by whatever number is in this line here, which gives you a lower number, so it gives the lender a cushion. And then we size the debt to be paid on that lower amount. Amortization, of course, is how long we have to pay back the principal, and reserve accounts are there for the hiccups in the road to make sure that the interest, et cetera, is actually serviced. So those are the two senior financing options. And I did highlight on this page one of the gap filling options, which is the CHAFA Middle Income Access Program. The reason I thought it was important to highlight it's sort of the one gap filling program where it doesn't rely on good luck and studiousness. Like it's a pretty commercial deal. They have terms, they have some negotiation on terms, they have some waivers for things like rural resort community like we are. But in general, we can kind of take the flyer and layer it into the pro forma and know that we're going to be able to access that. So if I was risk rating which of the buckets of financing are going to be more or less likely, this would come up on more likely, which I thought it was worthwhile mentioning. I'm going to skip all the details about it. If you have questions about it, let's hit it in the question section before I bore you to tears on this part.
Yeah, so are we able to ask questions yet, or are you still going?
Still going.
All right.
I mean, if I break for one, I'll have to break for everyone, right? Sources and uses. We expect the project, this first phase of the project to cost about almost $69 million. You can see the build costs, infrastructure costs, tap fees, fire fees, early allocated development costs, development fees, and debt and interest and fees over the course of building the project. So these are interest and fees during construction. How's that going to get funded? 71% from the senior debt, so that municipal or more likely agency debt that we were talking about. About almost 6% from CHAFA, Middle Income Access Program. This caps out at $6 million, so we have a little room to fill other gaps if other things don't come through. There is a DOH housing development grant, which opens in springtime this year, which we could get up to $50,000 per unit. We've talked to the DOLA rep who is supportive of that. She said, don't bank on getting 50,000 for all 200 of your units. So what we've assumed half of the initial units sort of logically in compliance with the 50% at 120 AMI. We're hoping to find a way to either get direct injection from Fraser River Valley Housing Partnership over the course of the next 2 years of construction in 2 tranches, or the concept of sort of revenue support payments that could be leveraged by the project is another one that we're also going to talk about in context of the town funding. this $3 million of grant funding in here is ostensibly the Stronger Communities grant that the staff of the town is pursuing right now for 4 million. So we've tried to be a little bit conservative here. And then the town funding is 2.9, which is what you saw on the prior page to be consistent there. You know, there's a reasonable sized chunk of equity. Like we said, that's really going to be driven by ultimately what the cash flow of the project looks like and what some of these other things shake out as, where we're going to find that capital from. Average AMI around 165%. This is the mix of units. Here's some details about the senior debt terms, that it's in compliance. Total square feet, cost per square foot. A couple of high level assumptions on cost to build, and you know, we're currently carrying a reasonable amount, but not an incredible amount of contingency. You know, we are including commercial spaces in here. Commercial spaces generally also less valuable on a dollar per square foot basis. So if, for instance, you know, we don't come to a deal with post office and we pivot back to residential, that'll ease some of the tension up here by improving the cash flow on the project, right? The agency bond financing, another couple of assumed discounts. No property taxes other than the Grand School at a full mill levy of about 25 mills. Discounted permitting fees, discounted MPE fees. There's a couple of different credits for energy efficiency, and in general, all of the energy efficiency, solar on the roof, solar in the parking lot, heat pumps, or energy efficient furnaces, or, you know, all electric, etc. All of that makes us significantly more competitive for each one of these, you know, filler gap financing opportunities up here. So though they are sometimes a little bit more expensive on the front end, with the current subsidies in the Inflation Reduction Act, federally, lots of subsidies locally, and then just the general competitiveness that it gives us against other projects competing for the same limited pool of gap financing, it's well worth it to pursue those things. Town commitment, $2.9 million. We've talked about that already. The other concept that we have discussed, and you know, this is an indicative straw man right now. We think it's executable. It's not the only option, and it won't necessarily be where we end up executing around. Is a commitment over time. We said $500,000 for the first 15 years. It would start in 2026 when we hit operations. Could start in 27 if you'd prefer. Which would allow us to raise this additional debt up front. Sort of I'm going to call it a revenue supplement, annual revenue supplement. And that brings down, that gives us some flexibility on being less dependent upon all these gap financing options, right? It's certainly a commitment and a meaningful and important one from the town. It's not the only way to skin the cat, but it kind of takes advantage of all the work that we're going to do to set the capital stack up anyway. So it slots in nicely, and it doesn't create a big burden up front, right? You know, the trade for the town commitments, so to speak, is that the partnership approach that we would take would leave the town as the owner of the project. Somebody will say, what about the equity? The equity would really be structured as sort of a senior piece of preferred equity that would get paid out over time, and then the town would ultimately own the project. So at the back end of the project, on the next page, you'll see like a 50-year pro forma. You know, the debt's paid off in year 35, 36, and you start to get cash flows from owning the project as the town. Some portion of that's going to go to maintenance and things like that. Other portion can go to whatever else it is that you want. If you want to, you know, allocate it towards a continued affordable housing program, sounds like a great idea. But ultimately, you own the project, so you already own the land. Might as well own the improvements.
Matt, as we move towards the next page, though, I think we should just, highlight what's in the right-hand column and what the implications are of that. If we could, please.
Sure. Which right-hand column? You want to go?
Yeah, on the pro forma page, just, talk about the basic highlights and what's happening, near the end of term.
Yes, okay, great. This is a pro forma. So we've got revenue at the top, net revenue. I've tried to summarize it, right? It's already hard enough to read. Net revenue at the top. This support payment that we've talked about here. Summary of OpEx. We get down to building NOI. We have our total capital build costs here, not inclusive of interest during construction. The construction debt is sort of here in the middle. And then we take that out with permanent financing. So the permanent financing has debt service here, sort of the fifth line from the bottom, starts with 1.465 million. Broad strokes on the far right-hand side, let's talk about, we have 272 million of building NOI.
Does everybody know what we mean by that?
No.
Yes.
It's the net operating income, meaning gross rental income less operating and maintenance expenses.
Can you
Sorry,
draw
Matt.
on the screen? No, by all means. This is the part I get all nerdy on and don't do a good job of simplifying. So $272 million over the course of 50 years, revenue less operating expenses. We borrow senior debt. We have to pay back the senior debt and the interest on it. That's about $137 million there. Down here. So that is 63, 72, carry the 135 left over. We also engage with the Chaffa Middle Income Access Program here, and we pay them about $5 million of interest and principal back. About $130 million left after that. The other non-dilutive, so the DOH, the FRVHP, equity, I'm probably forgetting one in there, that require payback. We've made some assumption that they do get paid back. They get paid back at sort of a probably a below market interest rate. And over time, that looks like $35 million. So let's take our 272 of NOI, subtract the 137 here from debt service, subtract $5 million of repayments to another one of our capital stack pieces, the Middle Income Access Program, and subtract another 35 million repaying equity and other non-dilutive. And we end up with about $95 million on the bottom. That's this number here. Those are cash flows, as you can see in this second to farthest right column, between 2034 and 2076. So that's cash on a monthly basis coming out of the project, maybe a quarterly basis, to the owner. We expect the owner here to be Town of Fraser. So that's an increase to your income based on a property that you own. That does not include the underlying value of the property, the land, the improvements, etc. There is maintenance cost included in the operating expenses, so you'd expect the units to be in reasonable shape, right? That it is 30, 40 years from now, so we'll need to make spaces for the hover bikes or whatever people are storing on their balconies at that point. But so there'll be a few things to amend about the project or improve about the project, but in general, you need to think about this as a long-term investment, not just in the community and the need, but also as a financial investment. Todd, anything to add on that?
No, I think that's it. Just a couple of touch points that the cash flow there accrues to the town, and there's also the underlying value of the asset at the end of the day, and the town is the ownership of that. So, shall we move on? So I realize we're kind of over time here and want to wrap things up, but I would like to just recap next steps in terms of completing the contracting process so that we can get through planning for the site. Complete our construction agreements with Big Valley so that we can get them engaged and ramped up for construction. I would like to just ask them to step up for a few minutes.
Well, before they go, I got a bunch of stuff I want to talk to you about, so
Okay,
we can wait for Troy and Rob to come up.
sure.
So just looking at your 160%, 3-bedroom at 3,773, you could buy a unit today for 700,000 and have that payment. The other issue I have is this is supposed to be an affordable housing project. This is competing with regular market housing. You guys got people at 160% AMI is 98,000. That's $47 an hour. The people we're missing are making somewhere between 25 and 30 bucks an hour. The state says in their Article 32, affordable housing is 60% or less of AMI. That's affordable housing. This is supposed to be affordable housing project. And I understand the LIHTC's a little slow, but the Mills Apartments, they've got, out of the 60 units, 51 are rented. And I think they've got the other 4 more that'll be rented by the end of this month. And they're working on 2 more after that. So by February or March, that should be up and running. So you should be able to use LIHTC. But the numbers you guys are using is market rate. And your numbers that you use for your breakout of your unit mix, that's the standard condo operation in Grand County. 0 studios, 12 to 13%, 1 bedrooms, mostly 2 bedrooms. And that's not what the people that are looking for housing are needed. The people that are looking for housing are the restaurants and the bars. We're not needing to house families of 6 and 7 people. We're trying to house singles, doubles, maybe triples. That's the workforce we're missing. So this is supposed to be an affordable housing project. And right now we have a competition with standard construction. The Coast League boys next door, Bison Real Estate, their rents are more in line with affordable housing than what you're proposing. And if this is a government putting money into it, we should be getting a much better deal for the public than what a full developer can do. So your numbers are either off or you're just not willing to wait for the LIHTC to lease up and then take the LIHTC housing. And I agree with you, the LIHTC housing is dangerous because of the 40, 30, and 20%. We don't have a lot of those, but we do have a lot of 60 and 50%. Most of our workers in town make somewhere between 40 and 70,000. That doesn't equate to what you guys are running these numbers at.
Matt, could you please help address that?
And I mean, where did you get your unit mix? And where did you get your housing needs? Because all the reports that Rob and the housing people have done is completely different than what you guys just presented.
The unit mix has generally come out of what we've reviewed from the county's needs assessment, as well as in the survey that we received.
Yeah.
So
Not for rent, not for workforce.
Well,
Hold on.
I mean, these 2 pages, the data on this page are from putting up the survey on the Fraser website and collecting, 200 plus responses over time. The Fraser River Valley Housing, or the Fraser River Valley Housing Needs Assessment below here, in general says the same thing that this says about rental units. If you have totally different information, we're all ears, but these are like.
Every report that's been done and every study shows completely different. The AMI at 100%, which is 61,700, that's 30 bucks an hour. And if you ask the people in this room, how many people their employees are getting 61,000 a year or 30 bucks an hour, and that's working 52 hours or 52 weeks a year, 40 hours a week, no breaks, no holidays to make that dollar.
I mean, that's straight from the housing study that was
I
done.
understand, but that's who here works 52 weeks a year with no vacation? Raise your hand.
Yeah, you and I understand. We own a business. Right? So we work that. But the average person up here, they're not working 52 weeks, 40 hours a week. And they're not making more than 30 bucks an hour. So I don't know how you guys got these numbers, because they're way off from what we can bring Rob up. He knows the studies. You guys are way off on your numbers and your unit mix. Every person I've talked to that wants to rent, they're looking for a studio or a 1-bedroom,
Yes, that's true.
right? There's a couple families that need 2 and 3 bedrooms, but most people, the only reason they want a 2nd bedroom is storage. They're not looking for roommates, especially after COVID. So the workforce we're missing, and this is supposed to be the affordable housing to help replace that, are the people that are coming into town and starting. That's who we're missing. We're not missing our $80,000 a year and our $90,000 a year and our $120,000 a year employees. We're missing our $20, $30, and $40 an hour employees. That's who can't. If you took a study of the people that are here, you're going to get a different answer than the people that weren't able to stay here this winter, that had to move out of town because the rents got too high. We have 2 bedrooms right across the street from you guys that we rent, and the highest we can get is $1,700 a month for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit. Because if we raise it, we're going to be renting to second homeowners or putting them on nightly rental, because the people that are renting them can't afford any more rent. A matter of fact, we lost, what, 3 of the units to the Mills Apartments because they qualified over there. They're 60%. So I'd like to see your studies, because they're not matching up with what our Fraser Housing has done studies on.
So I don't know if you can see on the screen here, but the bottom part with the blue, that is directly from the Fraser River Valley 2022 Housing Needs Assessment.
The 2-person household.
And I mean, that's a report that you all provided, in the RFP process a year ago. This table up here was what we were able to gather. You certainly have good on the ground information, but this is all the folks that responded to the survey that was posted on Fraser website.
Come talk to people. Don't put a survey on a website that no one looks at.
Right. I mean, you're looking at a 2-person household at 70,000 at 80% AMI. I can agree with that. You'll see a lot of that. But the workforce we're missing and that we need housing for are the people that are singles, studios, maybe a 2-bedroom, 2 brothers living together. Right? If this is supposed to be government funded, which we're putting money into it, then this should be a government project that hits close to the LIHTC rules. Not, I mean, we can go out and get different bids and we'll probably hit the same thing. And we can use Troy's building. This is standard market rates. This isn't cutting corners and making it cheaper for the people to rent it. And if the town's going to put in all the money, we might as well just manage it ourselves and do the project. Because that's what that 500,000 a year, the land, that's us putting in the majority of the money. Where's the money from the developers? Your guys' money. You get a profit out of this, right? So where's your risk?
So, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a chance that our fees would become some of that equity position as well. And deferred that way.
And 100 million over 50 years is 2.6 million. So that's not a whole lot of money. Sounds like a lot when you say 100 million, but you break it down to per year, it's not that much.
So I guess to answer, our unit mixes are based on the information that was provided to us.
Right.
We've been in the community, we talk to people all the time. We've addressed people that have come to our open houses. We look at this study that's been done countywide, and we've reflected that as well as what's coming through the survey. If it's not reflective, then, we need to look at revising the unit mix. I don't see that as an issue. We can focus on more 1-bedrooms. I mean, the rent per square foot goes up for a 1-bedroom unit. So,
Understood the cost of building.
Yeah. So,
I mean, we'd love to do a LIHTC project because they provide a lot more of the financing and they're more straightforward. This is massively complicated with 7 different people putting in different layers of capital. But that wasn't what information suggested. So if there's different information, then let's, I mean, please provide it and we will.
So do you
Yeah.
think we can split I mean, could we get LIHTC for the second phase? Possibly for like A and B or not?
He was that.
mentioned
that.
Sure.
You
Matt-
probably get LIHTC for the first phase because the Mills apartment should be rented up by March. And if they can get the AMI adjusted, which is splitting East Grand from West Grand, then our AMI in this end of the valley will go up, which makes it a lot easier to get people in. Because where they're hurting is when you can look at the 20% AMI to 50% AMI. I mean, anybody making 12,000 here isn't staying in Grant County. Anybody making 24,000 here, unless they have a partner, they're not staying in Grant County. So at the 50% AMI of 30,000, that's when you first can stay here. Because that gives you a rent of about $1,300 a month based on the government standards of affordable housing, 30% of your income.
Can't you decide what levels of AMI you want to go after with LIHTC, and the lower you go, the better odds of you winning the
Yes,
LIHTC?
you can adjust LIHTC up.
You
and
don't
down.
have to do 30 and
No,
40%.
right.
That's what I'm saying.
It just makes your application more competitive because it's called the competitive.
Right.
Right.
If you started your AMI at 50% or 40%, I'd say it's 50 because I don't know anybody making less than 30,000 a year anymore. But if you make it at that 50% and up, you're going to get a lot more filled up fast because those are the ones that we're looking.
But will they get awarded a LIHTC project?
For the mountains, probably. But that's what's hurting the Mills apartment is that our AMI is based on the entire county.
Right.
And
Yeah.
East Grand has a higher income because of our 2 towns closer to the ski area than a lot of the other sections of the county. So when we have to use the AMI for the county, there's nobody at that 20 and 30%. And so
Right.
that's what's hurting the Mills apartments from filling up. We also have to remember that name of this project just skipped my head over there by Safeway on the other side of our
Wapiti
Wapiti Meadows. That comes up in another 30 years, which I know sounds like a long time, but in a blink of an eye, that project is no longer deed restricted to workforce housing or LIHTC or whatever mechanisms using it to fund it. So
You say 30? That's soon. No, that's coming up like really soon, like
no,
2 years?
no, it's 30 years, at least 30.
They signed again?
From.
No,
No, those misinterpretation of the agreement they have in place. There is some portion that expires in 2028, but the actual deed restriction on the property expires in like 2045.
Gotcha. All right, so anyway, okay,
So the-
sorry.
So this is supposed to help replace that because we already lost Fox Run because they went bankrupt and we lost them as a workforce or affordable housing. I mean, they mostly rent to workers, however, but that's that market rate. And that's below these rates.
Matt, could you please just talk a little bit about the timeline for LIHTC financing when the applications need to be filed each year?
Yeah, I mean, we can, the point of doing this early in the year is that we can go pivot. But I do want to address some of, and it's August. We'll be in good shape with the schedule that we have to apply to a LIHTC program there. That means that if we win, if we're awarded one, then we'll be able to construct, and if we don't, we won't, and then we'll have to go again. So I think there's also a balance of when you want housing on the ground. I want to point out, because you have this grant restriction with the land, it actually creates a barbell effect. So there is no single apartment here at 165% AMI. There's a bunch of stuff right around 120 and a bunch of stuff around market rate. That's how you get to 165. If we want to do a wide variety of things and still come out with an average, better, you know, we might explore that possibility. But ultimately you borrow the money and you probably need to comply with the 150% at 120. One point that you made, the I fully agree with you that the difference in AMIs across the county is kind of a problem. But I don't see any path to bifurcating the AMI like in order to be awarded a LIHTC project there. I'm not aware of a situation where you know ultimately this is governed by the federal government where they've allowed for a inter-county bifurcation. But I mean I'll be doing that research tomorrow morning.
Yeah, well, there might be, because we're such a large county. There's no, we're called Grand County for a reason, right? There's no really other counties as big as this. And don't get me wrong, I want this project to go. I like the people we chose. I like the builders that you guys chose. I like the idea of having more housing in the Fraser area. I'm just saying that we put affordable housing on this, and we kind of need to be affordable housing.
So it sounds like a little bit of a breakdown of some of the data that was maybe collected in the surveys would be helpful as far as maybe existing residents and aspiring residents type of thing.
Right. And if I'm wrong, I'll go read all the reports again.
Well, and to their credit, they were at several of the Music in the Parks events here at the town and at Winter Park, handing out brochures and talking to people, like trying to get that boots on the ground type of feel. So there was some aspect of that, but I mean, light of knocking on doors, the survey has been an effective tool in the past.
Right.
So I mean, I think the information is, I think there is some quality there. I think there is some reasonable application there, but
right, and that's why I wanted to talk sooner, but gotta wait for all. So that's, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but that was my 2 cents.
Well, this is supposed to be iterative, right? So, if we want to sort of like consider carving out one of the buildings and trying to get that into the LIHTC program while still doing the other two at sort of a middle income level, that's a fantastic strategy. We sort of felt the urgency from everybody to have the thing in the ground at a reasonably affordable level. There's something nice about being able to manage the AMI scale collectively ourselves rather than sort of being told as I think the experience at the Mills has been where it needs to be and running into the challenges that go along with that. That said, that's how you get super affordable housing too. I wonder, I would have preferred to be up there today, obviously,
Right.
road conditions kind of suck. But maybe next week we could find some time to sit down and compare these notes so that we can, you can show me what you're seeing and I can show you what I'm seeing.
Sure.
There is, of course, the need. I mean, the other side of this table says that 70 or 25% of the people need something in the 20 to 70% range, right? So, and same with the table down here too.
Yeah, and what I'm looking for is what the companies need and what the restaurants and bars need. Because that's the people I talk to, and I know what they're paying their people, and I have a general idea of what their workers make with tips or without tips. So, I want locals to be able to live here, raise their kids here, and have their kids live here. And I get that that's a big dream at this point, but if we don't start doing something now, we're not going to have that in the future. We're going to end up like Crested Butte and Aspen, where people are commuting an hour to 2 hours to get to town. On days like today, we won't have anybody at work.
So I think, given the overall timeline of what it was gonna take to get LIHTC applications in place. So, forget the fact that we weren't gonna be able to qualify for that because of the status of the mills. That prevented any kind of application last
We
year.
knew that might have been a possibility though, when we started rolling with this project. We talked about it.
Yeah.
We all talked about it.
About it not being a possibility.
That we all talked about the mills maybe not being filled up in time for this LIHTC to go through. And
Well, it was interesting. I know for Clark, I think too, there's been a lot more challenges and headaches than he ever anticipated having to deal with the process for LIHTC.
I
It's
think
not
this
as
is
clear
something
as
we're
plain.
not gonna settle tonight.
So,
Yeah.
And like Todd said, we should,
let's
or
keep going.
Matt said we should do something next week.
yeah,
But
I'd
I'd like-
also like to say that it's been like 6 months since you guys come and talk to us. So you're getting this response because you're all of a sudden throwing $500,000 that the town is going to pay every month, like, or every year. Like, you're just throwing stuff at us, and we awarded you this project because we thought you guys could handle the financing and do all this other stuff. And I don't think anybody's really happy at the moment. So we need more communication, and yeah, maybe you sit down with us outside of board meetings and we work through this stuff. But
Yeah, I mean, this is a lot of information to throw at us. We didn't get this ahead of time. I mean, we're not all financial accountants and can sort through the numbers and everything, but we need more time to digest this and of course circle back. I mean, I think you need to bring, do some more work and bring it back and let's talk about it maybe outside of a board meeting, but this is
We might have to
maybe
have a
not the
special-
right forum to go
It's
this
not.
deep into the numbers.
It's not, we'd prefer to go through a series of workshops just to be able to have that kind of interaction.
Yep.
Matthew's idea, and I'm sure you thought about it too, and so Troy, a mixed, each building being slightly different, maybe that works out better for us in the long run.
And I think so. Where we stand today with the desire to get some of the product in the ground, and where we are in terms of the timelines for LIHTC, I think it sets us up very well for doing LIHTC application. If we do it in August, funding obviously comes sometime 3 months later. So that sets us up for phase 2. Certainly we can look at which buildings are sorted by phase 1 and phase 2. I don't think that's an issue. So there's opportunities to work with that. And so if that's what it's going to take, then that's what we do. But given where we are and the hands that were dealt and the information that we have on unit mix, this is the plan that we've come up with for phase 1, knowing that there are other opportunities for lower AMIs as we move forward. I think the other thing where we are today versus where we started is obviously a changing of the interest rates, which has had a very big impact on the way that the financials come together.
Right.
So, we can't belittle that, and we can't minimize where we are in the timing of things, given the competing projects and where that's put us. So, this allows us to move forward this year, and it allows us to readjust come next year.
We have to break down this year. We have to break down this year for our turnkey grant.
Right, so
And so that's,
we need a building we could do a set of the townhomes first, then cover ourselves.
okay.
I believe.
Hold on.
Depends if they're affordable.
For every dollar a townhome, you're gonna need 40 cents of free dollars to make it even remotely close to affordable based on experience. So I wouldn't, but
Good to
might
know.
I posit this? If we just took exactly what we presented, but we said, hey, we'll take building, and I don't know which one it is. So one of the buildings through the LIHTC process. And the worst outcome is you end up with this. And the best outcome is you end up with that building as LIHTC and then the better of this on the other two builds, something better than this on the other two buildings, because we brought down the AMI of the whole project. Like, that would seem to get a lot closer to where you guys would like to be. And it's a way that we keep moving the thing forward and we stay in compliance with the grant and groundbreaking, and we avail ourselves of all the different things that are on this page, all acknowledging that the one that we seem to want, the LIHTC, may not come true, and we still have a plan to proceed with everything or proceed with part of it and hold the other one back until we get LIHTC or things like that. So.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the dollar per hour that people make up here. At 160%, that's 2 people making 50,000 a year, 52,000. Which seems like that should be doable, but at $25 an hour, most people aren't making $25 an hour.
Yeah, understood. I think, Matt, that there's also another constraint relative to LIHTC, right? In terms of the value of the buildings that can be done in any particular application. And one LIHTC application, or even the 9 and the 4%, I don't believe, it's my understanding, that they're not sufficient to cover the entirety of Victoria Village. And so once you're awarded the first one, your probability of a second one goes down. And you might as well forget about a third one.
So
I-
Yeah.
we got a lot of work to do financial. This is the main reason that we finally have numbers is because we figured out finally the infrastructure that needs to go into Victoria Village. That's going to complement the master plan. We have some general preliminary engineering costs for all that work. So that's why we have numbers. We've been waiting on a pro forma so that we can actually have a presentation to kind of dive into this. This is a lot. We'll continue to look at the financial strategies that makes the most sense and get some good input, I think, through some due diligence that the staff can work through.
Yeah.
And so that we'll continue to work on this. I think just my recommendation is I think we move on. We'll be able to come back and we'll visit this several times over the next few months. So it's kind of a
Okay.
shotgun blast with a pro forma now in hand, kind of.
Yeah.
And your slab on grade, I'm assuming it's gonna be a nice thick slab well above grade. As
Yeah.
some people have had issues.
We'll make sure that they're well elevated and appropriately designed for sure. Yep.
Okay, so then
I mean, I have
we'll
full
come
faith.
back to this, but have Troy and Rob say a few words as long as they're here.
Yes,
Yep.
Sure.
we've been waiting and waiting.
Absolutely. The other thing that I want to make sure that we clarify, because it's been our understanding that even breaking ground for infrastructure counts as starting construction. So, if that's the case, and becomes the limiting factor, that's our way to fail safe,
Okay.
right? To stay grant compliant.
Yes,
So,
let's all double check that.
yeah,
So check that first.
Thank you.
Bank on it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. We've been pushing, trying to get this done as quick as we can, and you guys are responding to that. So don't think I'm angry. It's a shock to see that we're not where we thought we were.
right. And that's been the theme all along, because we initially had a longer timeline that went out to 27 or 28. And
Right.
we asked, well, how fast can you do it? And so then we looked to ways to do that, and we broke it into phases so it'd be financeable, and just the market has changed. So, we just need to be flexible. It doesn't mean that we can't achieve the goals or the desires of what we're talking about here today, because we can. It's just a matter of what happens this year, what happens next year, or in a subsequent year. Yeah.
Well, it's an aggressive timeline, because we had a presentation last meeting and basically they said that the bridge is a no-go right now. There's
it's
still a
not.
lot.
That's another year and a half. away.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's still a lot of hurdles to get over, to get approval, get stuff past the core, get, all that approved. It's gonna take a while, right?
It will. And we've factored that into the plan that's here, the timelines and the schedule. And, again, that's part of what's driving what's in phase 1 versus phase 2. So the phase 2, as you can see up top, that is all dependent on the Corps and FEMA. And so the Corps permit should be in hand mid-year, and the FEMA process takes a minimum of 12 months and more likely 16 to 18. And so from here to 18 months is the end of June of next year. And we're not showing putting in that bridge until August, September of next year. So that's where that falls out, and it's all being driven by that lengthy FEMA process that you're referring to.
Right.
If you guys want
But the bridge only impacts our ability to access the conservation easement. And so, or maybe I've said that backwards at 9 PM. We're good in the blue part. We can proceed with the blue part. And even, a portion of the townhomes.
And I'm sure, Clark Lipscomb, the guy that built the Mills Apartments, would be happy to talk to you guys about his experience with LIHTC and all of that. That might help you out as well, his numbers that he got.
Yeah.
He talked to me about it quite a bit. Come on up.
Come on, you need to.
Come on here, cowboy.
Good evening, Troy, Big Valley Construction, for maybe some of those that do not know me. My brother and partner, Rob. We've been here a long time, so I'm just gonna make it short. Not a developer, we're a general contractor. I think just from sitting and listening, some workshops would be some great next steps to make sure that the next time the team comes back, we're kind of communicating and not maybe surprising some of you. So, what Rob and I wanted to be here for tonight is we have finished up some fairly substantial projects in the last 3 to 4 months. We have the availability to staff this project. We're very excited about it. We have a lot of employee housing problems, and those employees get paid from $25 an hour to $60 an hour and everything in between. So I think we just all need to look at the different areas, as Parnell said. And but from a Big Valley perspective, we're very excited. We need to add, we know there's a huge problem, and we have the staff available, and we would sure love to get into the ground this summer, fall. We would love to break ground on the first couple buildings before September. Don't know if that's possible, just from an economic standpoint, winter conditions and et cetera, et cetera. So we just wanted to be here tonight. We haven't been here for a long time since interviews, and say that we're still very excited about it and look forward to hopefully moving some dirt this summer. That was a short version of what Rob and I originally had planned, but I don't need to sit up here and talk for 15 minutes. If we get closer to groundbreaking and you guys have a bunch of questions for us as a contractor, we'll be here anytime you want and address any of those questions. Do any of you have questions for this evening for Big Valley or Rob or I? Did I miss something major, Todd or Rob, that we need to go into tonight?
I mean, the only thing I can think is how can the town help you with the studios, 1 bedrooms, and even the 2 bedrooms, making them more affordable for you to build? I know the taps and tap fees and the restriction of units considered if you have a kitchen and a bathroom, which we've been working on to see if we can change that. But if there's something the town can help with to make those more affordable, then that's what we need to talk about here, is how we make this work.
Right, Parnell, I think that needs to be in our
Yeah.
follow-ups.
Yep.
Because we've still got an agenda to
Yes,
do.
I'm.
With that said, I'll let you get onto your agenda. I just wanted to say a few words tonight, and thanks again for the opportunity that we all have in front of us. There's some challenges, but I think if we work together in the right fashion, we'll accomplish some of those goals that we have. Thank you very much for everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, this was a good presentation. Lots of good
Thank you.
information.
Okay, now we have resolution, or we have the Meadows final plat extension by Garrett. What?
I would say, I believe, item C, ordinance 510 is before that.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, yeah. Was, boy.
Decisions.
Yeah, we're on amending chapter 19 regarding Riverwalk District. Also Garrett.
Alrighty, so this one should be short and sweet. I don't have a presentation or anything. If you all remember back in September, we had the conclusion of the update to the Riverwalk overlay zone, creating the Riverwalk district zone. During that meeting, we passed ordinance 501, making those changes. Within ordinance 501, there was text around employment requirements, and the original ordinance said that employment must be within the bounds of the Fraser Valley Recreation District. If you all recall, there was discussion during that meeting to change that to the boundaries of the Fraser River Valley Housing Partnership, i.e. it's the rec district plus Granby. Unfortunately, because the meeting minutes from that meeting did not reflect that change, town staff felt it was most necessary to provide this updated ordinance that incorporates that change. Again, because the ordinance that was ultimately signed after that meeting did not have the updated text. So this is just going back, correcting a mistake on our end, on my end, and making sure our code reflects the proper intent of the discussion that occurred a few months ago.
That's good. I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 510.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. Then, now we're at the Meadows final plat extension.
Thank you, Eileen and trustees. So I know this item came before you all at your meeting 2 weeks ago. I think the primary discussion centered around if we extend this plat beyond the date for the vested rights in Grand Park, how does that affect things? And I know Michael has conferred with Kent and provided you all with information. And Kent is also on the Zoom call and can correct me if I misstate things incorrectly. But again, just to reiterate the information as we all understand it, past that date, which is June of 2028, I believe, when the vested rights expire, my understanding is essentially nothing would change with the properties in Grand Park unless they were rezoned. So they would still be, excuse me, they would still be zoned PDD or Planned Development District. Even though the vested rights, have expired per the annexation agreement, there's no prior zoning for them to revert to, is my understanding, since they were annexed into the town at that time. So I think unless the town did some additional action to rezone them, to our standard zone districts, business, residential type zones, they could still be developed under the Grand Park plan development standards, if that makes sense. So there shouldn't be this conflict with extending the plat approval past the date of the vested rights agreement. And also as Kent I think mentioned, certainly that agreement could be amended between now and 2028. So there's that possibility as well, if that makes sense. So.
Ken, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to just clarify a little bit more. So the ordinance that allows a developer to request an extension on approval, which gets them another 5 years in a phased plat situation, is applicable across the board to any developer within Fraser. And so the rules that apply to all developers apply to Grand Park as well. So it's really irrelevant what is set forth in the annexation agreement. Kind of the way to look at this is the floor is the code provisions provided for developers in the town code, and the annexation agreement that Grand Park benefits from is a special arrangement on top of town code provisions for development, which enhance their ability to develop. They're like extra special provisions that allow the developer to, through the negotiated process of the annexation agreement, to basically do things that they would not normally be able to do under town code provisions. So you have to look at it like the town code provisions are the floor. So everybody who's a developer has the ability to come and request an extension. And it has really no bearing or no relevance on the annexation agreement, which is above and beyond the basic rights granted under the code, if that makes sense. So in other words, if Grand Park can show good cause for why they should be granted an extension, then under the code, they should be granted the extension.
Good.
I'd like to make a motion.
Can I ask a question real quick? So Kent, if the annexation agreement expires or the vested rights expire, and they have not started construction on those units, then the town could change the code in that area that would affect future development. So the town still would have some recourse. Is that right?
Yeah, so if the vested rights expire in 2028 and are not extended or renegotiated, then the developer will be left with developing under whatever the code standards are at that point in time moving forward.
Which
So-
could change by the board or by the town.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
I feel like any other piece of land in Fraser. You'd have to rezone it.
Yeah.
It would maintain zoning. Unless you change it.
Started.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2024-0107 and for the Meadows final plat extension.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nope. Okay,
Thank you, trustees.
Thanks, Kate.
so now we're back to the resolution we took off of the consent agenda. For the rehabilitation. And it's resolution 2024-0108. And I believe Kent is who took it off. Kent and Paul took it off.
Yeah, this is Paul. I'll address it. We had a little conflict with the town's contract and then their contract being included as an attachment. So we're going to clean up the contract and put the payment terms will be inserted into the main contract, the normal town contract. And so we'll just make that revision before it is signed by the town manager. But we didn't want any confusion on payment terms. So we will pull their contract and just have their payment terms inserted into our normal services contract. I don't know if anybody, it was just something that Kent brought up today and we wanted to make sure it was clear and we didn't want it on consent without explaining why we wanted to make the change.
That sounds good to me.
They'll use the town standard contract. Yeah.
And there won't be any issue with them, with
No.
Lane on that.
No, because they'll use the towns, we'll integrate their contract into the town's contract.
And that was in our budget, right?
And that is a budgeted item, yes.
Yes,
Yeah, I thought so. I just want to clarify.
okay, resolution.
Do we take any action on it? Is this?
Yeah, we need to approve the resolution
Right.
if everybody's okay with approving the
We took
resolution.
it off the consent
Okay,
agenda, so.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-0107.
No.
08.
08.
Oh, wait.
08 then.
That's right.
Fraser Well Rehabilitation.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we're back to Paul again, resolution 2024-109, contract with Merit and Company for Clayton Court Infrastructure.
So as everybody knows, we were awarded a DOLA contract for $1.5 million to construct the Clayton infrastructure. We put out an RFP in December to solicit design firms to design the infrastructure of the water line, the sidewalks, all of the infrastructure for the main road. And through that RFP process, we selected Merrick and Company as the successful bidder. And as part of that, we'd like to enter into a contract with Merrick for the design. Their proposal came in at roughly 130,000. We're going to budget 150 for over just change orders, the possible, which is within the amount that we submitted to DOLA. It came in under anticipated. And we have a timeline of roughly 2 months for the design. And that was based on getting the DOLA contract, we thankfully received that contract today. So we'll be working with Kent and his team to get that services contract generated to get Merrick started, as we couldn't start any billable action until we got the contract. And thankfully it came in today, the same day as the board meeting.
Paul, I had some engineers call me today. For 900 feet of road, and I get their sidewalks and they're doing some heating stuff underneath it, and possibly some Tesla charger type chargers or whatever, electric car chargers. But 129,000 for 900 feet seems pretty expensive for engineering. I mean,
So you have
Fires Avenue was $220 a foot put in the water line and $82 a foot for the asphalt. So I'm just trying to figure out how we're so high on just the design view that the everybody else that put in an RFP was above 129,000 or 150,000.
So we only received 3 bids. One bid was higher, one bid was lower, but had significant exceptions to their bid that would have driven. So it was basically a non-responsive bid. They had some exclusions to things they were unable. They were gonna have to bring in a third party, and they didn't have a price on those third parties. So we only had 3 bids. One was didn't meet the RFP completely, and then the third bid was higher than this.
Okay, I'm just double checking because we're spending a lot of the town's tax money on this.
The only way to drive the cost down would be to get more bidders, and we only had 3. I had some questions from some out-of-state bidders, but they did not provide a bid.
Okay, then we haven't picked a contractor yet to do the work, right?
No, we would need so we would be doing another RFP after the design process, and we have construction documents and bid documents, which are required by this RFP. We would then put it out hopefully in the next 3 months to try and solicit a construction contractor.
Okay, just want to double check.
Yep.
Thanks.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-0109, contract with Merrick Company for Clayton Court infrastructure.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Mm. Okay, appointment to the JFOC Joint Facilities Oversight Committee.
So this is coming to the board tonight because with the resignation of Philip Vandernail, it does leave us one short on the JFOC because he was on the JFOC. So currently Parnell and Eileen are both still appointed. So the board, we do need to fill that one vacancy. And whomever is appointed, it does run in the tenure with your appointment as a trustee. So it'd be really only one more meeting until the next election. I mean, is Brian and Parnell and Eileen are up, obviously, but 2 of them are seated.
Right.
Can we not wait until April?
No, because we have a vote coming up. I think.
It's
We
it's
have,
in our code that we have 3 trustees on the JFOC. I don't know as far as voting rights, how that would really change that. I apologize, I didn't look at that.
waiting it,
That's long term, Katie or Lucas.
right, that's what I was gonna say. It should be someone,
Because he'll be on if he's mayor.
Yeah, but he'll
But
only have,
then,
but what about if
Right.
one of the new trustees wants on it, that's what I'm saying.
well, that,
There'll be,
they'll,
Take it from
there'll
one.
be a space open at some point.
there will be a space, there,
Mhm.
Because if Eileen doesn't rerun, that's one that's open. If you put him on and I feed him, when I.
Then I'm off.
I think it needs to be someone that has 2 years left on their term.
Fine with that.
So what's the expectation? How many?
It's one meeting quarterly. It's the second month of the quarter. It's the second Tuesday. It's during the day from 3 to 5.
Second Thursday.
Second Thursday, apologize. Thursday. Yes. And, obviously you all are familiar with the JFOC. It is the joint facilities that operates the wastewater treatment plant. So it's all the three entities coming together, to discuss future items, making decisions about the plant. Yeah, it's an important
Katie,
commitment.
you have a advisor at home?
I do have an advisor at home, but I'm wondering, in April so does it fall in April?
I was gonna look up.
April is the second,
The next meeting is February 8th.
February,
Yes.
and
And
then,
then.
so I
2
could
months
do February 8th, March,
would be
but the one. in
April,
It won't be one in March.
no,
But there's one in
April,
April. I
yes.
think that I'm gonna be, I can't.
Oh,
Be in May.
If you need someone there.
where's it? I don't have the calendar on me. I apologize.
It'll be in May, Katie.
Well, yeah, February 11th.
Yeah, May. No,
May 11th.
February,
April 11th, excuse me.
May. It's May.
May
11th.
11th.
All right, then I'm okay.
Okay, so
I'd like to recommend appointing Katie Souls.
JFOC.
Second.
Any discussion?
Exciting bunch.
All in favor?
Aye, thank you.
Opposed?
You're welcome.
Okay, now we're up to updates.
Yeah, I can kick it off with a couple of updates. Workshop scheduling. Talked to a couple of you, I think, about this. We are dealing with some late night board meetings, especially when we have things like inclement weather, that it makes it challenging for staff to get home that need to attend the meetings, and for just anyone just getting home that wants to attend a meeting. One thought is to move the workshops before dinner. So one thought could be, if we're going to have a workshop with the meeting, it occurs from 4:30 to 5:30. We have dinner at 5:30, and the board meeting always starts at 6. So that way we're typically out of here by 8 or 8:30 for the longer meeting, or before that. So this is something that's very much dependent on your schedules, that works for your timelines and your availability. So just a recommendation I'd like to put out there.
Can I make a recommendation again to be more proactive with our time management and set expectations for agenda items as how long they're going to take? So people get up here and make a presentation, it just goes on forever.
We expected theirs to be at least an hour, and I know it
But
went
there
over.
was nothing on the agenda that set an expectation for how long it was going to be.
Yeah, we were at the last meeting, we were told.
Well,
that
I
this
didn't hear
one-
that, but anyway, I think that might be helpful to manage the length of the meetings, and so they don't drag on.
We can try it again. We tried it.
The only limitation I think it's been experienced in the past is that it can limit conversations that the board maybe needs to have a longer discussion on. So it's sometimes hard to anticipate where those discussions go. But we can absolutely look at.
Well, no, I'm not saying it has to be
We are
hard and
expecting an
fast,
hour presentation.
that it has to be a cutoff, but it's like the expectation is given to the people that are presenting to say, okay, we have 20 minutes. Let's tailor our presentation to that time limit roughly. And then, if we could bleed over 5 or 10 minutes, that's fine. But it's like, set an expectation.
Well, this Victoria Village has been 2 workshops and then a presentation at minimum.
Well, and I don't like the fact that they gave us this the night of, and we haven't had a chance to review it ahead of
Well,
time.
and again, it's just.
They just got
We
it
have a lot
together.
to look at now.
They just got it together under our pressure.
Yeah, so a lot of the pressure is the timeline.
They threw some of it together. And it seems like some of you don't know, the governor was here last week to talk with us about this, and they've refined it since they were here with the governor.
But we'll have more discussions with it.
Yeah.
For sure. And if we have a more relaxed timeline, we can look at some different financing options and approaches.
So what about the workshop idea,
Yeah, what do you guys think?
Fine with it.
We always have a workshop.
I'm okay.
I'm just doing it earlier.
What?
Starting at 4:30.
Is that, how can you, 4:30, how does that work for you, Katie?
I mean, I can do it.
Okay. you were the one I was kind of concerned about the most.
Yeah, I can, as long, I mean, yeah, I can do it. I'd rather be home putting my kids to bed than.
We
Yeah,
we don't
okay.
always have workshops, sometimes we don't, so then the meeting is always starting at 6, and it really helps with our public notices in the paper when there's a public hearing. It's consistent, so, and it also helps us move things up an hour, so, something worth trying.
In the
So,
summer,
right,
it'd be
if it doesn't work for
terrible.
whatever
Yeah,
reason,
think
we
of
can-
What
it
about in
because
the
we've got
summer?
Some workshops we need to do.
Well, it's like twice a month, run out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Katie,
Maybe Lynn's workshop once a month or something, I don't know.
might not be a bad idea.
The
What do
summer,
you think
though,
about a text reminder,
to
an
me,
hour before the workshop?
Well,
all of us.
oh, I thought you were singling me out, I'm like,
Well,
No, I singled myself out.
oh,
and
Always
I am.
rushing to me.
even in the summer, you wanna do that? When it's,
Well, I might suggest that we give it a try. After the next election, we don't know what will happen. There might people come in that say they absolutely cannot do that.
Right.
So we think we could give it a try and see how it goes. And there's always the option to zoom in if you cannot physically make it in, or if so there are some options there
Right.
to think about.
Good. I think we got some workshops coming up.
We can try it. Yeah, try it.
Okay, so we're gonna try it next meeting?
We'll try next meeting.
Okay.
The other last thing I had was, Katie, now that you're with the GFC, I'd like to invite any other members to, we do have an open house tomorrow, for the commercial pre-treatment program, which is it addresses a very serious issue, with state compliance with our discharge with the wastewater treatment plant and industrial waste that's going to the plant, through commercial users, various different types of commercial business, but very specifically brewers and distilleries. Those impacts that are coming down from a byproduct through the manufacturing process, that's really throwing off our ability to meet state requirements for discharge of the wastewater. So we're going to be doing an open house with that from 2 to 4.
And that's you.
That'll be right here. Hoping we have a good turnout, expecting some other elected officials from the JFC to be there, and hopefully several business owners and the JFC managers will be there as well. So
What time?
tomorrow,
2 to 4.
2 to 4. So I was just, if there would be interest from any other board members or one of the GFLC appointed members for Fraser to be there, I think that'd be great.
Is it posted?
It's not posted as a public meeting. I think I was actually only anticipating 2 elected officials to be there. But we have distributed through the chamber to all the businesses and to our outlets.
Does that cover us?
I
mean,
Are there more than 2 of you that would like to come to tomorrow's meeting?
I was planning on coming,
Great.
I was planning on it, and Parnell, are you?
I might pop in, but
I don't know.
that's interesting.
But it's not posted, so we can't have more than 2.
Well, and
As long
again,
as
it's
we
an
don't
open
talk about-
house. We're not gonna be talking policy. We're gonna be kind of going over what the plan is. So,
Mine was come, but I was gonna
Listen.
be a little late because I have a meeting. at 1:00.
so if you can make it, great. We're not worried about posting it. It's not a major concern. We're not gonna have serious policy discussions there. It's really just an overview of what we're going through for this program that we're rolling out.
It's an important issue for sure. Oh, yeah.
It really is.
Really
It
big.
Let's hear it tomorrow.
Here tomorrow from 2 to 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get here as quick as I can, but.
Great. Thank you. That's all I got.
Okay, anybody else?
I went to the Mountain Rail meeting with the governor on Friday. I didn't know anything about him stopping by Fraser afterwards.
We got word like a few hours ahead, actually.
Okay,
Yeah, and yeah.
My
gotcha.
Friday was torpedoed.
Okay, just didn't know. It didn't seem like there was a lot of communication about any of it, really. I mean, I found out from the town of Winter Park that the rail thing was going on, so I stopped in.
Huh, I somehow I got an
Yeah, I had it
invitation, but
scheduled for 2 o'clock and then they sent an email.
Right.
The email I got came in after the meeting was over. So that didn't help.
Got an email about it ahead of time.
Yeah, mine didn't make it to me.
I'll try to be a little more cognizant of these types of visits and get that
Yeah.
information out.
Cool.
but both Matt
Matt.
and yeah, they
Who's
came
Mad
up in
Matt?
3 different.
Matthew.
They came up in 3 different vehicles, I think.
Met from across the street?
No, Matt Ginsburg.
From
Yeah.
MAHD.
Matt, I called him Matt, he's with Matt, Mount
Right.
Affordable Housing.
Okay,
He's not online anymore.
okay.
The guy who did this thing. So there's been a lot of pressure on him too. Some that we put on and then the governor put it on and the weather.
So when the time comes with our workshop, is it appropriate for us to include Rob in our conversation about what we should be looking at for financing?
Yeah, I mean, they're having conversations with Rob.
Okay. You could have them with the board also. That would be good.
There's no,
I would like to
that's,
do that.
it's just kind of discussions.
Yeah.
We have some financial strategies I think we need to look through
Okay.
with this and evaluate our options, after we do some vetting and some looking at some financial strategy, if the board's comfortable moving forward with contracts for the remaining $2.9 million of pre-construction work, that's great. Otherwise, the board does want to look at our agreement is structured so that we want to put it to bid. Once we have the pre-construction work done for this project, we could put it to bid if the board wanted to. So that's just an option. I'll just make sure that you're informed of.
I just want to do by
I
what
just
we
want to
told
figure out how to fund
the
it.
public we were gonna do by,
Yeah,
Right.
big
This
balance.
is not anything to do with what we said we were gonna do at all. This is
It's also a way bigger financial contribution.
Huge.
That we weren't.
huge.
Okay, let's not rehash.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I
well, can incorporate Rob into our discussion, and maybe we just make that funding just our board and not our contractor, just the board and Rob.
Right. I think there were just some concerns about construction. I thought, I think
No, I mean,
staff
we're
wanted to
just
hear.
worried
from
about
us
money
well.
and how we're gonna pay for it.
Well, and the first thing that really pushed, Brian and I pushed this was because we wanted to hear about shovel in the ground.
Yeah.
So we didn't lose this grant.
Yeah.
That's big time.
Yep.
And then I only wanted, most of us were at the ribbon cutting. What? No, not the whole thing. But, I was gonna thank, it was just all of us and then, Matt, who did send some of us videos. But I wanted to thank the staff and Conroy Excavating. They really, we had a lot of hurdles on this project, but they got through it. And also to DOLA for $300,000 and the Grand County Conservation Trust Fund for $75,000. So I just wanted that on record.
Awesome.
Okay. Oh, yeah, right, you're on here.
Let me pull up that page. So I'll make it kind of quick. On our website, we do have an updated 2024 election page, and it does go pretty well into detail regarding the election and the DDA. So we have 2 pages. We're trying to direct traffic here. Sarah has created a DDA page and they do link together on each of their pages to get information out there. So if you guys are looking or want to point people in direction, for now, this is a great place to go. We will be sending out postcards and letters to people to inform them about the vote coming up for the DDA. We're hoping to send out postcards probably sometime towards the end of January. I'm still working on who exactly that's going to go to. And then we will also send out some letters to let people fill out affidavits if they are eligible to vote so that we can get a ballot to them. So we're gathering all that information. Obviously, if you have anybody have questions, this is the page to go to. You can direct them to me. If it's specifically more about the DDA, probably Sarah or Michael are a bit more informed about just overall the whole DDA. I have a high level, but they have a deeper level.
That's
Okay,
right off the clerk's page, right?
it's right at the clerk's
If you
page.
go to government town clerk page, you'll see that link for the
Yep.
election.
Yep.
Do you want to show them the map? Where people can
Yeah, if you go down,
Yeah.
it does link on there.
It'd definitely be helpful just as you're talking with people and coming into contact with citizens, businesses, to just kind of help spread the word so people are looking for this information. It's a very unique election situation in that we don't have a given list of voters. We're trying to put that together. So the more people that are aware and needing to see if they may be eligible, if they're not already a registered voter who lives within the DDA district, they do have to complete an affidavit in order to be eligible to vote and get a ballot. So we're working on trying to inform people as best we can, but again, there's not one. We're compiling different lists and doing the best we can to reach everybody. But the more people that are just kind of spreading the word and helping to guide people to the website to look for information, that would be helpful. But they can go on the website and put in their address and see if it.
On that map, we can back up. So this map is up, and right here, there's a little thing here, which will kind of, you can type in your address and it'll search. Now I found you can type in your address and it comes up if you're not necessarily in that boundary, but it kind of can show you your address on the map and that it's in or outside of that boundary. It's kind of I think it's a pretty useful.
And that's on
tool.
your election.
It's on the election
website
page and it's on the DDA page, but the election page links to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
a breakdown of who's a qualified elector, because again, there's different categories depending on if you own land, if you're a leasing, or if you.
Or a registered elector in the DDA boundaries.
We'll do another update at the next board meeting.
Yeah, and if you guys want more detailed information on that, I can certainly get more information to you or type something up or whatever you guys may like. But we're in the infant stages of working through all of this.
And is this part of the election that's coming up in April?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Yep. And then just real quick, petitions are due on Monday, the 22nd, January 22nd. And I am working with KFFR to work on a candidate, kind of a debate. I'm gonna do one for the mayor, one for the trustees. Right now we're looking at March 6th and 7th in the KFFR studios. So once we know for sure who's on that, who's gonna be on the ballot, we'll make sure that everybody's available on those dates, to get that out. That's all I have. Thanks.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Not paying for any more.